Colleagues, before we begin today, I'd like to pay tribute to Anne Widdecombe, who died in tragic, deeply troubling circumstances last week. Anne was a formidable politician, a prominent figure in public life. She was a Member of Parliament for Maidstone for 27 years, holding a number of ministerial posts in the 90s, and was fierce and enjoyed robust political debate. Whether you agree with her or not, she was principled, spoke her mind, and was true to her beliefs, which were informed by a Christian faith. Anne was a close friend to David Amis, who was murdered in 2021, and both were fellow animal lovers. In light of the ongoing police investigation, I would urge members to take care not to say anything in this House that might prejudice a future trial. I will set up more on that advice of the Home Secretary's statement later. For now, we are thinking of Anne. But just say on a personal level, Casa Pizza in Lambeth, in Kennington, is where I spent a lot of time in the evening sharing a pizza with the one and only Anne Widdecombe. She was a friend in many ways. Politically, we may not agree, but she was, without doubt, a courageous, principled politician, and all of her flaws with family and her friends. Yeah. Order, order. We now come to questions. Secretary of State for Home Department, Lorraine Beavers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Kiana Dawes was pushed into taking her own life. Oh, sorry, question one.
Minister.
Can I associate myself and my colleagues with your remarks about Anne Widdecombe, Mr. Speaker? Anne was a minister when I was doing my politics A-level, and she has been a firm part of our political life for the last 3 decades. May she rest in peace. With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 1 and 2 together. We are rolling out domestic abuse protection orders across England and Wales and have trebled the number of forces with domestic abuse specialists in control rooms under Raneem's law. We have established the National Centre for Violence Against Women and Girls and Public Protection to transform the response to VAUG.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Kiana Dawes was pushed into taking her own life by her abusive partner. Before she died, she said that he had killed her. With domestic abuse-related suicides on the rise and women in abusive relationships being more likely to take their own lives than being killed by their abuser, will the Minister commit to the Home Office working with victims and campaigners to ensure that the law fully reflects the role that domestic abuse plays in the death of such people like Kiana?
Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend for raising such an important issue? And the answer, of course, is yes. We are funding research with all police forces to better capture information and inform our response. The Law Commission is reviewing homicide law, including the use of manslaughter offences where abuse may have driven someone to suicide. I know that the former Minister, the member for Birmingham Yardley, was working hard on this, and I know that the new Minister will be too.
Jonathan Davis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. 1 in 5 people experience domestic violence in their lifetimes, and this equates to around 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 or 7 men. But it is thought that only 20% of this is reported, and it is also thought that the significant underreporting in terms of the domestic violence experienced by men due to social stigma. So what steps is the department taking to understand the scale of this problem and to drive action?
My honourable friend's right to raise this issue. Too many victims, including men, do not feel able to report domestic abuse, and we must change that. We recognise that there are additional barriers that male victims face, and that has been set out in a dedicated explanatory note alongside the VAUG strategy, and the Home Office funds the Men's Advice Line to help male victims access support.
Mr.
Speaker. Intimate image abuse is increasingly being used to threaten, control and exploit women and girls after relationships break down. Yet police have no power to require the deletion of those images if they were obtained consensually. What steps is the Minister taking to close that gap and better protect victims?
The Honourable Lady is right to raise that, and we are working hard on that. As she knows, there is a huge amount of work going on in terms of the law that has just been passed, the Police and Crime Act, and the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. Of course, we will continue to do everything we can.
John Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of my Horsham constituents, a victim of abuse, has seen her abuser let off with a suspended sentence after the case took too long to go to trial. She now has to live with a debilitating illness caused by her abuse, while her abuser gets to carry on with his life. Court delays are of course bad in any case, but for victims of abuse, there can be an extra hardship. So does the Minister think that we need to think of some special provision for such cases?
The Honourable Gentleman's right to raise the issue of court delays, and we have a whole strategy led through the Ministry of Justice to make sure we speed up those court cases, and he's right to highlight the particular impact of those. We are ramping up the support that we give to victims and making sure we are helping people, trying to give them information about what is happening, even when there are delays, and of course we'll listen to his question very carefully.
Dr. Zubir Ahmed.
Please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I answer this, may I briefly say what is on the minds of many in this House and pay tribute to Anne Widdecombe, a true public servant, and I will shortly make a statement about Anne and the ongoing police investigation. In relation to question number 3, Mr. Speaker, this government committed to end the use of asylum hotels this Parliament, and we are on track to deliver just that. We have brought the number of hotels down from 213 in July 2024 to fewer than 117 today, meaning 1 in 5 hotels open at the election are closed now, and we continue to move people into more basic accommodation, speed up case working, and remove record numbers of people from this country.
Mr. Speaker, can I commend my honourable friend for the way she's gone about reducing the amount of hotel use in this country after the shocking legacy that was left behind by 14 years of the last government. She will know these hotels have become a source, unfortunately, of right-wing intimidation, violence and community cohesion and tension. Can she reassure me in Scotland in particular that as families are moved out of these hotels, that the accommodation they are put in is not only appropriate for them, but also appropriate for the communities in which they are housed?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. Let me reassure him we work closely with local authorities, accommodation providers and safeguarding partners to ensure that families and vulnerable individuals receive the support that they need throughout any move, and that is true across the whole of the UK. We do understand that hotels themselves can impact community tensions, and whilst people have a right to protest peacefully, nobody has the right to intimidate communities or vulnerable families.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just building on the last question, RAF Linton on Ouse, where 1,500, up to 1,500 asylum seekers may be put, will be open gates. And it's a village of 600 adults, and close to that is a primary school. So may I ask the Home Secretary, in light of the comments about community cohesion not being in schools nursery, will she now rule out RAF Linton on Ouse as an inappropriate site because of the proximity of the primary school?
Let me say to the honourable gentleman, no decision has been taken, and all of these factors, including other community assets, schools, community facilities, are taken into account as part of the decision making.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government and I inherited 3 asylum hotels in Bournemouth, and I know that the Minister is working through a complicated process to close the hotels in Bournemouth. I have asked on the 5th of January, the 9th of February, the 9th of March, the 8th of June, and today, whether the government have positive news about the closure of any of the asylum hotels in Bournemouth. Can the Minister give an update, please?
Home Secretary.
Let me thank my honourable friend for the tremendous campaigning that he has done in this House on behalf of his constituents, and let me say to him there may be further good news to come, but this government has a commitment to get out of all asylum hotels by the end of the Parliament, and we are on track to do that.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Home Secretary for what she said about Anne, whom I first met over 50 years ago, and she was as formidable as an undergraduate as she later became in later life as a mature politician. I believe that nobody other than the present Home Secretary on the Labour benches could do more to tackle the asylum problem than she is doing. But having said that, this strategy of moving people out of hotels and into camps or dispersing them can only ever work if other people are not coming in constantly to replace them. So what plans does she have for truly deterring people so that they know that if they embark on a small boat, they will physically not be allowed to melt into British society in the future.
Well, I thank the Honourable Gentleman for his question. He's right that in order to deal with this problem effectively, we do also need to reduce the inflow of people coming across the Channel. He will know we're debating a bill later today with measures designed to do just that, as well as the wider policy changes that I have announced since I have been Home Secretary, designed to change the calculation of those who are in the north of France looking to get on a boat to come to this country that way. I think he is signalling, of course, the Conservative Party's previous policy of the Rwanda scheme, which he will know we disagree with that as a deterrent, but we are working on all and every other measure in order to deter those people from making those journeys in the first place.
Democrat spokesperson Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The NAO reported last year that the cost of asylum accommodation contracts had more than tripled from under 5 billion to more than 15 billion. Clearly, they're bad value for money, they're bad for communities, and they're bad for the asylum seekers themselves. The member for Makerfield has stated his ambition to activate the break clause in these contracts. Given that he is set to become Prime Minister next week, is the Home Secretary planning to rip up the agreements?
Well, those are contracts that we inherited, and they will be retendered under this government to ensure that we drive value for money across those contracts. He will know, of course, the cost of asylum accommodation has come down, asylum accommodation and support has come down by over £1 billion since this government came to office, and we will continue to make progress on that.
James McCleary.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have made the landmark commitment to halve the levels of violence against women and girls in a decade, and already we are taking action. We will prevent children from taking, sharing and viewing nude imagery on their smartphones and tablets. We have invested £53 million to tackle the highest harm perpetrators, and we've protected over 1,000 victims through domestic abuse and protection orders. Our ambition is clear, and there is much more work to be done.
James McCleary.
Speaker, Sussex is in the grip of a crisis of violence against women and girls. In the county, only 3% of reported rape cases ever make it to trial. And for the few that ever get their day in court after distressing delays, just 53% see a conviction, which is 10% below the national average. It's therefore no surprise that so many women in the county have so little faith their abusers will ever see justice. Operation Soteria was launched in 2021 to overhaul how rape and other serious sexual offences are investigated and prosecuted, yet there appears to be little progress in Sussex. So can the Secretary of State update the House on the progress of Operation Soteria and set out what action she is taking to improve the investigation and prosecution of rape cases in Sussex?
Thank you. Well, let me say firstly to the Honourable Gentleman that I do recognise that rape and sexual offences can have a devastating impact on victims, as can the process leading up to an investigation and hopefully a charge, and those rates are far too low. I'm happy to arrange a meeting for him with the Policing Minister to talk about the specific issues in Sussex, but all forces are implementing Operation Soteria, which is designed to support officers and prosecutors build the strongest case through tools, training and guidance. And I have, of course, also asked all forces across the whole of the country to implement specialist rape and sexual offences teams by the end of this Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had a number of cases in my constituency where male perpetrators of domestic abuse use their partner's immigration status as a tool to control and abuse them. So women feel unable to report crimes of any kind because they're worried about their own immigration status. So could the Minister, the Home Secretary, outline what the Home Office are doing to protect women from this form of abuse?
Here.
Well, let me say to my honourable friend that no woman should be afraid of coming forward to report domestic abuse, regardless of either immigration status or indeed any other status in this country. And let me make very clear that they should do so unafraid as to the impact that that might have on their immigration status. We will support all victims of violence against women and girls, regardless of their status in this country.
Sure, Select Committee, Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate myself with your and the Home Secretary's comments about Anne Widdecombe? She was a formidable human being and somebody that we all are thinking about very much at this time. Now, this week, in light of that news, the safety of politicians is something that we should all consider. And the Home Secretary may be aware of the situation of District Councillor in Staffordshire Moorland, Councillor Jill Salt, who has been the victim of sexualised AI images. Now, I don't agree with Councillor Salt on many things, but on this I stand in total solidarity with her. So will she join me in condemning the comments of Reform Councillor Dave Poole, who said that Councillor Salt needed to grow bigger balls in order to do the job?
Let me say to the Honourable Lady, I think that those comments are a disgrace and that I would hope all members across this House, regardless of their party political persuasion, would take a unified stance on all instances of either violence against women and girls, threats, abuse, the creation of explicit sexual images, and indeed those that break the law as well. And let me say that message clearly from this dispatch box, and I hope it's one shared across the House.
Christopher Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A report by the National Audit Office in January 2025 said that there was a lack of buy-in by other departments when it came to previous violence against women and girls strategy. We know that if we're going to tackle violence against women in my constituency of Harlow, but across the UK, we need to ensure that this is a cross-party work and that departments don't work in silos. So what is the Home Secretary doing to ensure that is the case?
Well, let me assure my honourable friend this is a cross-government strategy, a cross-government commitment. It has been led by the Prime Minister himself directly, who has got government departments together to knock heads together and to make sure that everybody is equally committed. I'm sure that won't change, regardless of what may happen in the very near future. Let me assure him this remains a cross-government strategy, and I hope that it is one that does have support across parties as well.
Shadow Minister Katie Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would like, if I may, just to echo your tribute to a predecessor of mine, Anne Widdecombe. She was an exceptionally effective Member of Parliament, has been a really tough act to follow, and is very fondly remembered in the Weald. On behalf of those of my constituents she served for decades, a role she fulfilled with outstanding dedication, I'd just like to say thank you. Last week, I met a group of victims and survivors of the most appalling sexual violence, like Angela. It's not her real name, but Angela was first raped by her stepfather at the age of 8. He then sold her to men for sex to pay off his gambling debts. He was sentenced to just 10 years in prison, and now, having served only 6, is being let out early by the government. My question to the Home Secretary is one that those women were asking. Why did they endure the years of pain and danger it took to have their abusers put in prison, only for this government to let them out again after such a short time?
Well, let me say to the Honourable Lady, of course I recognise the strength of feeling and the experiences of all of these victims and survivors of the most appalling abuse. And I'm pleased that in this case that justice was sought through the criminal justice system. Too often many victims don't come forward at all. She will know that what the Justice Department are focusing on is to make sure that we do not run out of prison places in this country. Over the last 14 years of the Conservative government, only 500 places were added to the whole of the prison estate. And it's a crisis that I, in fact, directly inherited when I came into government, and I do know how precarious the number of prison places in this country has been. And I hope she will agree that for all victims and survivors, the most important thing is to make sure that we never run out of prison places in this country again.
James Aston.
Number 5, please, Mr. Speaker.
Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I will group this question with questions 7, 9, 15, 20 and 22. Last year saw over 3,000 illegitimate premises raided and nearly 1,000 arrests. I have provided £30 million of additional funding over the next 3 years to go even further, and as a result, thousands more businesses will be raided, hundreds will be arrested, and millions in cash will be seized as part of a permanent national crackdown.
James Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. High street crime and shoplifting remains a key concern for my constituents who have seen some pretty awful examples. My local police have had some successes, and they are running local initiatives on high streets that are starting to deliver results. Can I ask the Home Secretary, because there will be other such examples around the country run locally, can we make sure, as well as national initiatives, we are gathering together those localised ones and those local successes, bringing them together and sharing that good practice to make sure we're bringing it all together as part of an attempt to clean up our high streets?
Well, let me thank my honourable friend and pay tribute to the work that is happening in his local area, and let me reassure him that we are working from the Home Office very closely with our colleagues in the Communities and Local Government Department as part of the government's wider strategy for high streets. This is, of course, a criminality-focused crackdown to deal with some of those businesses that we know are front organisations for other criminal behaviour, but we will be working with our colleagues closely, and I'll make sure that all of those good examples are used as a spur for others to take action too.
Patrick Herbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These criminals on the high streets, they move quickly, but the government response has tended to be too slow over many years. So, can I ask, when will the current pilots finish? How will success be judged? And when will every town in Britain be able to say that they benefit from what works?
Well, firstly, let me say to my honourable friend, this is not a pilot. It is the real thing. I've made funding available to every force area in the country to take part in this national crackdown. And in addition, I provided enhanced funding to 3 hotspot areas where the need is greatest. But success, I would say to my honourable friend, means more shops closed, more criminals arrested and more cash seized.
Not Toman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for her answer. Residents in my constituency of Watford are concerned about crime on the high street, whether that's theft, antisocial drinking and drug use, or violence and hate crime. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that it is only thanks to this Labour government that we are finally getting a grip and dealing with it?
I thank my honourable friend for his question, and we are certainly starting that long road to making all of our communities safe. We've made good progress so far in this Parliament with knife crime and knife homicides down very significantly, and there are of course 3,000 additional police officers and PCSOs in neighbourhood policing as well. We will make more progress as the government rolls out the measures in our Crime and Policing Act, as well as the wider High Street strategy, which will include the crackdown that I have announced, but is part of wider work with the Communities Department.
Will Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my constituents want to see tougher action against the criminals who hide behind businesses such as the rogue barber shops and the vape shops and the mini-marts, a blight on many high streets in my constituency. So can the Home Secretary update the House on what the government is doing to tackle this type of offending and get these dodgy shops closed once and for all?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, and that is precisely what this new national crackdown is designed to do. The additional money will put more officers on the street to raid these dodgy shops and other premises, and we're also providing funding for trading standards and HMRC as well, because we know that this is a multi-layered problem and it does require assistance from other professionals as well. Immigration enforcement will also receive additional funding as part of this crackdown. We are determined to make sure that our high streets are safe places for communities to use.
Harpley Chapel. Not here. She'll jump.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many seaside towns like Rhyl and Colwyn Bay in my Clwyd North constituency are working really hard to regenerate their high streets and attract investment. Can the Home Secretary confirm that the High Streets Organised Crime Unit will ensure that coastal towns facing issues with organised criminal activity receive the same support as larger urban centres?
Let me very clearly offer my honourable friend that reassurance. The nationwide crackdown, which is led by the National Crime Agency, will involve enforcement activity across the country, including in coastal areas like hers. Enhanced funding is currently available for all police forces to bid for via the National Crime Agency, and I'd encourage my honourable friend to make sure her force is involved.
Alberta Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why was the effectiveness of the High Streets Organised Crime Unit completely lacking when 2 weeks ago BBC journalist Sue Mitchell and her excellent team exposed the case of Mr. Twana Jamal working in such a high street business right next door to my constituency office? And why has the Home Secretary and none of her ministers had the courtesy to respond to my correspondence asking for an urgent meeting on this nationally significant case involving a convicted human trafficker?
Well, let me say to the honourable gentleman, I'm not aware of his correspondence, but I will chase that up when I get back to the department later this afternoon and ensure he receives an appropriate response. He will know, of course, that there is a live investigation at the moment, so I can't comment on any of the details of that, and certainly not the operational details of that, but I will make sure that he is updated in an appropriate way, given he's the local Member of Parliament.
Lee Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. High streets are already under pressure, as I've seen with our local fight to keep the Thatcham and Hungerford post office open, and retail crime and antisocial behaviour make that pressure worse. So can the Minister expand on how the High Streets Organised Crime Unit remit will extend to smaller market towns like Hungerford, Thatcham and Newbury, and villages like Lambourne?
Well, let me assure the honourable gentleman it is a national crackdown. It is led by the National Crime Agency, and I have provided funding for all forces, regardless of the type of area that they represent, to be able to bid in order to get the enhanced activity in their areas. And I would encourage him to talk to his force about what they are doing to make sure that they get their share of that money.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Mr. Speaker, Bridgewater High Street has many excellent independent businesses like Styles Menswear, Soda and Rye, and Elise and Louis. But there are also too many dodgy Turkish barbers and criminal enterprise selling illegal cigarettes. So will the Home Secretary outline what additional she will give Avon and Somerset Constabulary to get rid of this menace on our high streets?
Well, let me say to the honourable gentleman, I recognise the strength of feeling across the House, and I feel it myself as a constituency member of Parliament when we see these premises open up and everyone in the local community knows that they're dodgy and that they're involved in all sorts of other criminality and are front businesses, and that is why I've announced this crackdown. It will apply across the country. The National Crime Agency will take the lead on that, and I would encourage his force also to think about how they might benefit from the funding that has been made available.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The High Street Organised Crime Unit is a welcome step to take illegal vapes off our high street, but organised crime gangs are then moving with impunity online, where enforcement is a lot less rigid. So what is her department doing for stopping that it is such an easy thing to move from illegal trading on our high street to illegal trading online?
Well, let me say to her firstly, I think she raises an important point about illegality online, and of course the government the Home Office has an interest in that, but also other government departments, and we will continue to work with partners across government to make sure we're doing everything we can to clamp down on the platforms that enable illegality. But she will recognise that the physical presence of these many thousands of businesses across our country in our high streets has had a very damaging impact on local communities, and I think in that context it is right that this Home Office and this government is focused very specifically on the physical locations of these businesses to make sure that we are driving out the criminality and the antisocial behaviour that has left too many of our high streets no-go areas for local communities.
Because Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Dodgy vape shops are a scourge on our high streets, but even more horrifying are some of the people who run them. Touana Jamal, convicted in France and described as the godfather of people trafficking, has reportedly been found in Leicestershire running 2 vape shops. Does the Minister agree that this demonstrates the need for stronger powers to tackle rogue vape shops and organised crime? And if so, why has the government cut funding to regional organised crime units and opposed stronger closure powers for the police and local councils?
Well, the government hasn't opposed stronger closure powers, and in fact the government is currently consulting on a planned increase of closure orders from 6 months to 12, and we'll be bringing forward legislative measures very shortly, and we're also looking at the separate regime in relation to closure notices as well, none of which of course was acted upon when he and his party were in government.
Bailey.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I will group this response with question 16. The Government remains grateful to the British public for the generosity shown to Ukrainians who sought sanctuary in the UK. The Ukrainian scheme provides a substantial offer of support and demonstrates our commitment to the Ukrainian people. Government has been clear from the outset that this offer of sanctuary is temporary. That position has not changed. We continue to consider future arrangements for Ukrainians in the UK and will provide an update on longer-term arrangements in due course.
Haley.
Ukrainian constituent Artem is currently seeking to apply for a funded apprenticeship, having now been educated here in the UK. Despite his excellent credentials, he's being turned down for every single apprenticeship because his permission to remain expires in May 27, despite the fact that under the current Ukrainian resettlement scheme, he will be able to immediately apply for a 24-month extension. So does the Minister agree with me that this is both deeply unfair and a waste of talent and opportunity for young Ukrainian refugees who are seeking to rebuild their lives and contribute to our society?
I am sad to hear that case. Of course, the Honourable Lady does partially answer the question for me in the sense that what we have done in government is made sure that the extension period that Artem will be eligible for is a 24-month one to give greater certainty, yes, to individuals about their future, but employers and course leaders too to take a longer view in light of those opportunities available to Ukrainians in the UK.
When did Jim?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I
echo the comments of my honourable friend. Can I take this from the other side, that this lack of certainty is actually challenging for those Ukrainians who are looking to return to Ukraine? My team are currently dealing with a situation where a family who are looking to go back to Ukraine are not being allowed to access the savings from their bank. Can we get some support and guidance to help people who are thinking about going back to be able to do so?
Well, of course, when people do wish to move back, we would want to support that in any which way we can. I have to say the savings point is a new one to me, so if the Honourable Lady was to write, I'm sure we'd help in whatever way we can.
Mr Murray. Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm drawing your attention to my declaration of interest. There is some scepticism among the public about refugees, but despite the fact that twice as many people came to this country from Ukraine as crossed in small boats, there has been no public outcry, there is no public unrest. Does the Minister agree with me? That is because the public recognise that refugees who come here fairly, in a legal way and with proper support are absolutely welcomed by the British people. And what conclusions is the government drawing from that as they've created their new scheme around safe routes?
The Honourable Member raises a very, very important issue here. I know from my own community where sometimes that immigration conversation is very difficult indeed, that those same people who raise frustration at the lack of order and control in the system as inherited from our predecessors were the same people who leaned into the Ukrainian scheme. Same people who've leaned into the Hong Kong BNO scheme, same people who've lent into the Afghan resettlement scheme and the Syrian scheme. The message I take from that is that when the British people see that the systems are ordered and controlled, and that for those who get protection or those who need it, and we know who's coming, then they lean into it. And that, of course, is the spirit of our reforms to the system, and I hope the Honourable Gentleman, indeed all Honourable and Right Honourable members, will support us in that venture with our legislation this evening.
Lee Pitcher.
Mr Speaker, question number 8.
Minister.
The figure in the question represents the maximum number of animals expected to be used under licences granted in early 2026 for up to 5 years for the purpose of benefiting humans, animals or the environment. Animal use may only be authorised where no suitable alternative exists. The Government remains committed to accelerating the replacement of animals in science wherever possible.
Lee Pitcher.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The statistics published just last week show that 2.54 million scientific procedures involving animals were carried out in Great Britain in 2025. This represents a decrease of just 4% compared to those in 2024, but a 9% increase in experiments on dogs and a 13% increase on those using monkeys. Does the Minister agree that greater urgency is needed to accelerate the phase-out of animal testing, and will she consider the merits of a clear long-term plan such as that set out in Herbie's law?
Yes, I do agree that greater urgency is needed to accelerate the phase-out of animal testing, and I welcome, to that point, the Government's strategy, which was published and backed by £75 million to do just that. DCIT has committed to publishing clear timelines for specific actions, and I very much look forward to seeing them.
Edward Mrower.
10, please, Mr Speaker.
Can I just take this opportunity, Mr Speaker, to pay tribute to PC Jess Turnbull, a PC who died in the line of duty just aged 18, and I attended her funeral along with other colleagues on Friday. It is a reminder, if any were needed, of the price that we ask of our police officers. This government is providing an extra £2.4 million to defend the package of deliver the package of wellbeing measures set out in the Police Reform White Paper. This includes enhanced trauma support, improved occupational health provision and stronger leadership on wellbeing. Working with police partners, we will ensure officers and staff can access timely, effective support that is vital for our police workforce.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A police officer and constituent reported a senior colleague for sexual assault. Separately, she was domestically abused and raped by a partner. Her domestic abuser was arrested with bail conditions preventing contact, but in her trauma-induced state, she continued to instigate contact and was subjected to a police misconduct proceeding. Despite experiencing severe trauma, including a suicide attempt, evidence about her mental health and welfare was not considered. She will never be a police officer again. So what steps will the Minister take to ensure police forces adopt genuinely trauma-informed misconduct processes for officers who are victims of sexual assault, rape and domestic abuse?
Can I just say how sorry I am to hear about the situation of his constituent, and of course would be very happy to talk in more detail about that case so that we can learn the lessons. We are looking at what happens during misconduct cases and what happens in terms of the support that is given to officers. There is also a particular issue around domestic abuse that is suffered by police officers, where we are trying to ensure, working with women's organisations and others, that we get this right.
Jonathan Hedder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Policing Minister for her answer to my written question confirming that the Home Office does not collect data on PTSD in police officers. I wonder if she agrees with me that either the Home Office or police forces do need to have this data so we can understand the scale of the problem and support our officers accordingly.
I agree that we need to be doing all that we can to record data. We're looking at data on suicide, for example, as my honourable friend knows, and making sure we have the right information there. We are expanding our psychological risk assessments from 50,000 to 150,000, and that will hopefully also give us more information that we can use. But I stand with him in wanting to support our officers in any way we can.
Vincent Lynn.
Number 11, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government recognises the importance of a prompt announcement on visa numbers to enable the agricultural industry to plan and prepare. The UK government is committed to supporting the UK horticulture sector, but it is also important that the sector reduces its ongoing reliance on significant numbers of seasonal workers from overseas. We're engaging closely with the sector and other stakeholders and will announce the number of seasonal worker visas available for 2027 shortly, in line with usual practice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm currently taking part in the excellent NFU Food and Farming Fellowship. In a recent visit to a vegetable farm, they told me that the numbers are announced far too late in the farming cycle for them to be able to plan in advance. Now, if we are to have domestic agriculture, we are going to need some seasonal workers. So will the government please look at working with the industry so that we can plan in advance and so that we can actually run our farms and agricultural sector properly?
Absolutely. I thank the Honourable Member for his important question, and I will ensure that we work closely with DEFRA, we already are, and engaging with the sector to ensure that the announcement on numbers is timely, as it needs to be, so that they can plan their growers.
Swallow.
Number 12, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We assess that the route has been a success. Since it launched, more than 170,000 Hong Kongers have moved to the UK, and thousands have now been granted settlement under the route. The government remains steadfast in its support for the Hong Kong community in the UK and those who will arrive in future.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Hong Kong community in Bracknell Forest have welcomed the announcement of the continuation of a 5-year settlement route for B&O visa holders, as well as the expansion to adult children. But real concern remains around changes to language and income settlements, as well as concerns that Hong Kongers prosecuted by the Chinese state under the national security law are seeing delays to accessing ILR status. So could the Minister set out when clarity will be given to my constituents on these really important issues? Because it is right that we stand by the Hong Kong community, given our long and historic ties.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for his question. We have, of course, consulted widely on settlement, and we are considering the responses and will bring forward reforms at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, of course, those on the B&O route can continue to apply, and the service standard for those on that route continues to be 6 months. If there are any individual circumstances, please do grab me after and we can go through that.
Mr. Alicia
Mr. Speaker, Anne Widdecombe was a force of nature, and my heart goes out to all her friends and loved ones. The B&O route has provided sanctuary for Hong Kongers fleeing the autocracy of the Chinese Communist Party, but its effectiveness should not be measured in visas granted, but whether people are actually safe here. B&Oers live under CCP bounties, doxing and surveillance. Yet a year after the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme went live, not one person or one company has registered as working or taking money from the Chinese state. And the government still refuses to put the Chinese Communist Party in the enhanced tier. So does the government really believe that not a single organisation in the UK is engaged in political influence on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party? And if not, how many investigations have there been into those failing to disclose? And the annual report on furs was due to be reported by the end of June, Mr Speaker. So is the government planning on sneaking it out behind the summer recess to hide their failure to protect us and Hong Kongers from the Chinese Communist Party?
I thank the honourable member for her very important point, and it is essential that we keep those who are here safe. The Security Minister is keeping this under review and will write to her in due course.
John Whitting.
Number 13.
Minister.
In England and Wales, there were 145,550 full-time equivalent police officers as of September 2025 and 146,868 police officers as of September 2024. This government is focused on putting officers where the public expects to see them, back on the front line, keeping our communities safe. We have already delivered more than 3,100 additional police officers and PCSOs into neighbourhood roles.
Sir John Whittingham.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Minister has confirmed that under this government the number of police officers has fallen. And it is now proposed that in Essex they will become part of a regional force which is going to be more remote and less accountable to the people they serve. How does that increase public confidence in policing?
I can also say that this morning, as part of the measures to tackle anti-Semitism, we have announced funding for an additional 500 police officers in areas where we need them most, which will also, I'm sure, members across the House will welcome. The Right Honourable Gentleman asks about forces. As he will know, there is a review currently being undertaken by Lord Bernard Hogan-Howe, who is looking at both the local policing units and the force regional level units, as well as the National Police Service that we will be introducing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the 48 new neighbourhood officers and PCSOs that have joined Cleveland Police in the last year, but I want to see an overhaul of the National Police funding formula to support the Cleveland area. The Policing Minister has committed to do this, but can she give us further clarity on the timelines for when we can see that formula change to more officers back on our streets again?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question? He's absolutely right. The funding formula is completely outdated and was not updated by the previous government and is sort of almost decades old. And we are going to review it, and we are doing the work on that now as part of the reform programme. And we will, as soon as we have an announcement, we will bring it forward.
Matt Baker, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Under the last government, police numbers reached a record high. Labour promised to increase police numbers, but instead we've seen them fall. As the Minister was forced to confirm, down 1,318 in the last year. Is the Minister doing anything to protect the number of officers in response policing so that when people ring 999 in their hour of need, they're not left waiting?
As the Shadow Minister knows, and as we replay every time in this place, the previous government cut the number of police by 20,000. They then recruited 20,000 and they put 12,000 of them behind desks, which is not where the public want them to be. We have put 1,300 officers back onto our streets. We will put 13,000 of them back on our streets by the end of this Parliament. And a statistic to end this question, under the last 2 years of the previous government, shop theft rose by 60%. It has just fallen by 1%. We are turning the tide on the terrible crime that the previous government oversaw.
Jerome Mayo.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Number one.
Secretary.
This weekend, an event in Suffolk was due to be attended by over 10,000 Muslims. Instead, it ended early because the police had become aware of a credible threat to the lives of those present. They acted with speed and skill, and I thank Suffolk Police, counter-terrorism policing and the organisers for their swift and effective response. Thanks to their actions, those attending the UK Ijtima in Barham were kept safe. 12 individuals have now been arrested as part of an investigation led by counter-terrorism police, which they describe as extreme right-wing terrorism related. This investigation is at an early stage and we must give them space to pursue their lines of inquiry, and I know the police will provide further updates. But let me say, we must all stand united against hatred. The actions of a minority are not who we really are as a country, and we should never be defined by those who plot violence against their fellow countrymen and women.
Mr. Speaker, given the reports in the press of yet another U-turn being forced on the government by the revolting backbenchers, does the Minister still believe that the qualifying period for indefinite leave to remain should be increased from 5 years to 10?
Well, let me tell him it has been settled government policy since last summer, in fact, that the qualifying period will rise from 5 years to 10. The government is consulting on what transitional arrangements may be needed, and we will come forward with settled policy later this year.
Speaker, during a coffee morning on the Sherborne estate in Crewe, I spoke with several residents who described persistent and distressing levels of antisocial behaviour in our community, including residents having eggs thrown at their properties. Can the Minister set out what steps are being taken to ensure that antisocial behaviour is dealt with robustly in places like the Sherborne estate?
I understand my honourable friend went door to door talking to people about these issues, and I appreciate his efforts in doing that. Our Crime and Policing Act is delivering new and enhanced powers to tackle antisocial behaviour. Respect orders will bear down on relentless ASB offenders, and we have ensured that every police force in England and Wales had a dedicated ASB lead and a local action plan to crack down on these thugs.
Home Secretary Criswell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join you in paying tribute to Anne Widdecombe. She was a formidable campaigner who served with huge integrity. She will be missed. And I know the whole House supports the police in delivering justice for Anne. Yeah. Reports today suggest the Home Secretary and the new Prime Minister plan to capitulate to some of their open border MPs on the government's own ILR plans. Previously, the Home Secretary was clear. The changes will apply to those in the country already. Can she now repeat that pledge? Or is the Prime Minister doing his first U-turn before he's even entered Downing Street?
Is rather desperate, Mr. Speaker, there from the Shadow Home Secretary. He knows that the position is exactly as was set out in the consultation which was published by this government, where we have consulted on transitional arrangements for those who are already in country. It is settled policy that the qualifying period will rise from 5 years to 10. It is the implementation of that that is being consulted upon, and we will have settled policy later this year.
Well,
Not quite as clear as she was previously. Mr. Speaker, vile rapist Shabir Ahmed must be deported back to Pakistan along with all eligible rape gang perpetrators. Separately, survivors like Fiona Goddard have said they are terrified at the prospect of rape gang perpetrators being released early from prison in the coming weeks. So will the first Home Secretary firstly bring forward emergency legislation to ensure Ahmed can be deported? And secondly, will she urgently make the changes needed to ensure that no rapists will ever be eligible under the government's expanded early release scheme?
Well, let me say to the Shadow Home Secretary, firstly, he knows that the issues in relation to Shabir Ahmed and his deportation from this country are exactly the same as his government faced when they were in power. There is both a legal challenge as well as a practical one. I will be dealing with the legal issues later today, Mr. Speaker, when we have our debate on the immigration bill, and the government's work on the practical hurdles to deportation continues between myself and the Foreign Secretary and others in government as well. And let me just say to him on releases from prisons, it is his government that allowed the situation in our prisons to get to a dangerous level. We all but ran out of prison places under his government, and under this government we will never run out of prison places again.
Mr. Speaker, I recently witnessed outside one of my stations an attempted phone snatch by 3 masked youths on electric bikes, which was fortunately unsuccessful. But at a community neighbourhood safety forum, residents raised with me this was a major concern of theirs. So could my honourable friend outline what progress we're making against tackling phone thefts, and does she agree that the phone companies need to do much, much more to make sure criminals can't pay and profit from phone snatching?
He's absolutely right. And Op Reckoning is delivering the Met's largest ever enforcement response to phone theft. And in the 12 months to May, phone theft in London fell by 18% on the previous year. And it was pretty much halved in the West End, where we see most of that occur. He's right that phone companies need to do more. And if phone theft doesn't continue to fall, we will take further action.
Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Culture Secretary has quit X and removed her department from the platform, citing its descent into misinformation and abuse. Does the Home Secretary agree with her decision? What is the Home Office doing about the abuse and misinformation on X? And will the Home Office be leaving too?
I think everyone in this place is concerned at the rise of hatred and division online, not just on X, but on other platforms. And we are looking as a government, of course, led by DCIT and other colleagues, on how we crack down on that, and also how we create a society in which we try to unite people and not divide them. And members in this place have a strong role to play in that.
Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pennine Domestic Abuse Partnership is a strong example of non-judgmental, trauma-informed support for victims of domestic abuse. For many women, they are the first point of contact. However, for others, the emergency services are the first to respond. So would the Minister clarify what steps can be taken to ensure that this non-judgmental, victim-centred approach is consistently reflected in the police's engagement with victims?
My honourable friend is right. A non-judgmental, victim-led approach is exactly what we need, and that is what we are trying to drive through our response. We've established the National Centre for Violence Against Women and Girls to improve the police response to violence against women and girls, and the new trauma-informed first-line public protection programme is piloting in 5 forces this summer, which equips frontline officers with the skills to manage investigations and support victims.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the Home Secretary is boasting about the fact that hotel asylum seekers' numbers are being reduced, but of course they're being moved into HMOs, and the government won't produce the actual figures of how many are going into HMOs, which means places like Hinckley and Bosworth are getting more HMOs. So will the government commit to produce the data to show exactly where people are being moved from and to, so we can see it specifically around HMOs, because it is not in the data and has not been released in the quarterly data? I'd be grateful for an answer.
I'm slightly saddened by the Honourable Gentleman's question. He and I had a very, very good conversation about the nature of the supported population in his constituency. He knows that we work very closely under a policy of successive governments for full dispersal, so that the challenge of supporting the supported population is shared more fairly. Where there have been local disproportionate issues, like in postcodes of his own, we were able to make positive changes there. I would have hoped he would have recognised that. But to be very clear on his original point, if he talks about data, the May stats release show a reduction in the hotel population of 35% and an increase. If the Honourable Gentleman, he can do the questions, he can't do the answers as well. If he would, a reduction in 35% in hotel population and an increase in the supported population of less than 1%. Even he can do those maths.
Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So on Friday, I met with Barnham Parish Council in my constituency and the head teacher, Amy, of the adjacent primary school. They raised concerns about the proposed accommodation of large numbers of asylum seekers at RAF Barnham. They worry about community cohesion, particularly if large numbers of young men are to be transported into neighbouring towns and villages without access to supervised constructive activity. So will the Minister outline what material steps will be taken to address this problem?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Friend for that question. I would stress, as my right Honourable Friend, the Home Secretary, said, that no decision has been taken in respect of this site, and suitability assessments continued. We're engaging with relevant local authorities, health partners, police forces and other partners to minimise the impact on local services and communities in exactly the way that the Honourable Gentleman speaks.
Kieran Mullen.
Can I begin by thanking Madam Deputy Speaker for securing a meeting with the Minister with local MPs, councillors and residents of Crowborough, where the Minister heard for himself directly reports of illegal working, groups of young men drinking on the street and the smuggling of alcohol onto the site. If the government is going to force this camp on people, the very least it can do is to ensure that people there play by the rules. Can the Minister introduce breath testing and make clear to anyone drinking on the site that if they're found to fail those tests, their asylum claim will be immediately thrown out?
grateful to the honourable gentleman both for the question and for his time and for Madam Deputy Speaker's time and advocacy and indeed local councillors. I was very concerned to hear the reports about those drinking off-site. We are looking closely, as I've said to the honourable gentleman, about making sure that's not doesn't happen. We already block merchant codes on aspect cards to prevent it. We are talking about a relatively small amount of money, £9.95 each week, but we do not want to see that spent on alcohol. The sites themselves are alcohol-free as well. I'm not quite sure that breath testing is the way that we need to enforce it, but nevertheless, I share his vigour to stop it.
Joe Powell.
Mr Speaker, can I warmly welcome the Government's swift introduction of the National Security State Threats Bill that received royal assent last week. The activities of the IRGC have caused huge concern across the country and in particular to my Iranian and Jewish communities. So can the Home Secretary update the House on when these new powers will begin to be used to protect our country from hostile state-linked organisations and threats?
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Today, my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has laid statutory instruments to designate 3 bodies engaged in foreign power threat activity under the National Security State Threats Act 2026. The Islamic Movement of Companions of the Right, who have publicly claimed 7 attacks at UK locations linked to Jewish and Israeli communities and Persian language media, Iran's IRGC and Russia's GRU volunteer Corps. Designation will make it an offence to support, assist or obtain benefits from any of these organisations.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As the House will know, the Home Office does not routinely publish figures on the number of small boat arrivals who abscond or whose whereabouts subsequently becomes unknown. Now, given the Department holds case records that would allow this to be calculated, will the Home Secretary commit to publishing it periodically so the House can properly scrutinise the scale of the problem?
Well, the honourable gentleman will know of the 70,000 people removed by this government, 41% up on our predecessor, but he mentions very good point around data. That's been the subject of our response to a recent ICIBI report. We are looking at it closely. We do want both colleagues in this House but the public at large to have the best possible data to work from so we can have the most informed conversation possible.
Jonathan Hender.
Mr Speaker, the Police Federation is the only staff association police officers can join to represent them, and yet the Chief Executive has paid himself £1.4 million over 2 years from members' subscriptions. So does the Minister agree with me that frontline police officers have lost confidence in the national leadership of the Federation and should be allowed to set up an alternative?
As he knows, the Chief Exec is no longer in post. We are clear that the pace of change is not fast enough. We have made clear in the Police Reform White Paper that we will bring forward any reforms necessary to ensure that the interests of rank and file officers are properly, effectively and robustly represented. It is important also to say that there are good members of the Police Federation who are working across the country doing brilliant work, including those that I met in Newcastle. So we do need to tread carefully, but he's absolutely right to raise this issue.
Thank you, Mr
Speaker, my constituents in Meriden and Solihull East are greatly concerned about abuse of the ECHR, including Article 8. They deem cases like the Albanian criminal who was not deported because his own son wouldn't eat foreign chicken nuggets as an insult. And the Home Office's own legislation analysis shows that abuse of the ECHR costs about £4.9 billion. I know the Home Secretary wants to reform the ECHR, but can she accept that if this runs out of road, then Britain should be allowed to forge its own way on human rights law, including leaving the ECHR?
Well, the ECHR provides important protection both for ourselves and abroad. But we have been clear that we inherited a system without order and without control, and we're restoring that order and control to the system. Part of that is reform of Article 8 of the ECHR, exactly as the Honourable Gentleman says. And if he does have the vigour to support such action, he won't have to wait long. In fact, 10 o'clock tonight, he'll have the chance to show it.
Owen Perkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Migrants who come in to work in our National Health Service and in other crucial aspects of our employment sector are tremendously welcome and should be encouraged. But I have seen cases in Chesterfield that have been surprising in terms of the number of familial applications that have accompanied the arrival of a single worker. And I just wonder whether the Secretary of State can tell us from her perspective whether she thinks that the family visa regime is working as it was intended and whether it is an area that's right for reform.
I mean, I do agree with the Honourable Gentleman. He will know that we suspended family reunion, but with family roots more generally, we believe, as we set out in our white paper over a year ago, that reform is overdue of that system. We'll be introducing a new family policy that creates a fairer and more consistent framework.
Chris Coughlin.
Mr. Speaker, 3 years ago, my 22-year-old constituent, Hannah Byrne, whose family is here, died on the first night of her holiday in Corfu. 2 British women left the scene without ever being interviewed by police. We know the Greek authorities have submitted 2 requests to the Home Office for mutual legal assistance, but the family know little else. Will the Minister meet with me and the family to help them get the closure and answers that they so desperately need?
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I'd like to extend my sincere condolences to the family following the tragic death of Hannah. But you'll appreciate that in line with legal confidentiality obligations, I can neither confirm nor deny whether a request for mutual legal assistance has been made or received. And it would be inappropriate for me to comment on an investigation in another jurisdiction. I am happy to meet the honourable gentleman if that's what he wishes.
David Smith.
Mr. Speaker, 2 months ago, my constituent and farmer Ian McKee was subjected to a burglary in which his workshop was broken into and a quad bike was stolen. According to Mr McKee, this is a crime that is happening more frequently, more boldly in North Northumberland. So what reassurances can the Minister give me about rural crime and the seriousness with which the government is taking it?
Can I say how sorry I am to see his constituent being a victim of crime in this way? Of course, we are funding the Rural Crime Unit and we are putting neighbourhood police back into every neighbourhood. That includes our rural areas where every single person, wherever they live, will have a named contactable officer that they can get in touch with. We're also doing what we can in terms of legislation to stop this kind of crime, but I'm happy to speak to him again about it.
Pete Wishart.
Speaker, there was some truly shocking and appalling scenes in Glasgow last week, fuelled by misinformation about the accommodation of asylum seekers. People were harassed in their own homes and roads were blocked. When will they finally take on the spread of misinformation? And will they finally recognise the real threat posed by the right wing who are ready to take advantage and exploit these situations?
I mean, we recognise that threat. We monitor hundreds of protests a year. In a democracy, people have to be able to make their case, but that should never tip into harassment, abuse, or the type of disruption that the honourable gentleman talks about. Our job is firstly to fix the system, and I hope he will support us tonight in this venture, but we are very clear we will not accept harassment, intimidation, or any other type of prejudice.
Bruce Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last 2 years, I've led the charge to ask for our Asylum Hotel to be closed. Last week, the final family and individuals left the hotel. Thousands have joined me in calling on Britannia to finally refurbish the Metropole Hotel, which is a massive eyesore on our Golden Mile. So will the Minister join me and thousands of residents in Blackpool calling on Britannia to put the hand in the pocket and finally restore this golden crown jewel on our seafront?
Well, Mr. Speaker, like many honourable and right honourable members, I've got very, very fond memories, childhood and adulthood, of Blackpool. And I'm glad to see the Metropole being back on the journey to its proper purpose, because I know that it's a crucial part of the Golden Mile. I'm not sure it's within my ministerial remit to direct refurbishments of hotels. Nevertheless, I want it to be the best possible asset for his community, and I've offered to come with him to help promote the local economy in order to ensure that it is.
I thank the Home Secretary and welcome the Government's decision to move to prescribe the IRGC. Many of us campaigned for this and in fact were sanctioned by Iran for doing so. Far too many of our previous Prime Ministers and Foreign Secretaries bought the fallacious argument that this was going to prevent diplomatic relations with Iran. Now the Home Secretary has chosen to do this. How will she enforce this so we quickly stamp out all the activities of this terrible organisation from our country and ensure it never takes root again?
I'd say to the honourable gentleman, thank him for his contribution. I would just say that the government has passed new legislation in order to allow for the designation of the organisations that my honourable friend referenced earlier today, and that includes the IRGC. The designation tool means that they are now brought within the context of the National Security Act, and I do expect that when our laws are broken, prosecutions will follow. He knows that we've had some success with National Security Act investigations. I expect that to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The scampi catching sector in Northern Ireland is currently reliant on foreign seasonal workers. In order to stay afloat, the sector needs around 66 visas, valid for just 7 months of the year. Will the Minister consider extending the seasonal worker visa route to the nephrops industry, giving the catching sector the certainty it needs and protecting processing jobs at Whitby Seafoods in my constituency.
Thank Honourable Friend for her important question. I work closely with DEFRA and many sectors in agriculture to ensure that they can operate if they need that access to foreign workers. Of course, we are looking to reduce that, and I'm happy to meet and talk more about this specific scampi, which I love, after this. Thank you.
John.
Can I thank the Asylum Minister for his professional courtesy in calling me on Friday to say that the asylum dispersal plans for Stoke Heath in my constituency have now been scrapped, and I'm very grateful for that, and it's a great relief to many residents. It was a completely inappropriate location from the get-go. But can I ask him to put on the record whether the government has any plans to put asylum seekers into Clive Barracks at Turnhill in Shropshire, currently home to the Royal Irish Regiment?
Grateful for that question and the spirit the honourable gentleman offers it. I would recognise his advocacy in helping us understand that it was the wrong thing in the wrong place. But I know, not totally different to the honourable gentleman's contribution, that now gets followed up with misinformation of people who were planning on creating division through asylum accommodation, now pointing at another site. So to be clear to him and to his constituents, we have proposed 3 new sites and the extension of time at 2 other ones. Those are decisions not finally made, but those are named sites, and those are the sites under consideration, not his.
Final question, Ewan Steinbank.
I welcome the Minister's explicit statement last month that he wants to see the Clarendon Hotel opened by the Conservatives closed. When any hotel closes, can my honourable friend confirm that the vast majority of those being moved out will have their accommodation needs met within existing capacity?
I'm grateful for that question. I think and talk about the Clarendon Hotel a lot because we are resolute in closing that hotel. But I appreciate his constituents or others wouldn't feel much better if they thought that those bed spaces were just being provided in the immediate area instead. Goal 1 for this government is to reduce demand, and we're seeing positive trends in this space. That's allowing us to close hotels and allow us to close more. So exactly in that spirit, not merely by displacement into dispersed accommodation. As I said earlier, a decrease in 35%, Mr Speaker, in hotel accommodation, an increase in dispersed accommodation of less than 1%.
Excellent. Let the front bench change over. Question, Sir James Cleverly.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government if he will make a statement about local government reorganisation.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I'd like to thank the right honourable gentleman for his question. Nearly 21 million people in our country are served by complex 2-tier structures that divide responsibilities, slow down decisions, duplicate costs and blur accountability. Sure. The government's aim on local government reorganisation is clearer structures, stronger councils, quicker decisions, more homes and better services. We have set out the timetable. We are on track, and this includes making announcements on the remaining areas this week. My officials have written to councils to confirm the announcement will take place this week, and I am pleased at the progress made so far, with unitary councils for 5 areas announced and elections held in Surrey. Structural changes orders are being brought forward as planned, and we are on track for new councils to go live in April 2028. £63 million worth of funding is available to support transition costs, which we are paying directly to councils. Each new council will receive at least £900,000. This is the first time funding has been made available by central government for this purpose, because we need to get these reforms right. Local government reorganisation offers an opportunity for our communities to give local leaders the funding, powers and capacity to grow economies, build the homes their communities need, create better public services, improving the lives of the people we serve. And I thank the right honourable gentleman for the opportunity to set that out.
Sir James.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We've all watched this particular film before. The Secretary of State, who once again scurries away to avoid scrutiny, tried to cancel local elections. And he was caught putting his thumb on the scales and was forced into an embarrassing climb down that cost time, it cost money, and it undermined confidence in politics and local government. And he's setting about the biggest reorganisation of local government in more than half a century, and is doing so with no mandate for a change of this scale. And now ministers appear to be desperate to avoid scrutiny by announcing these decisions on the final day of sitting before the House rises for summer recess, a pattern that we have seen before. And the Minister insists that these new shadow authorities, the elections for shadow authorities will take place next year. But we also heard that the elections for county mayors was going to happen of May of this year. And spoiler alert, Mr. Speaker, they didn't happen. They didn't happen. In many areas, there is still no agreed authority boundaries, no ward boundaries, no legislative timetable. How are councils, candidates and electors supposed to prepare for elections without these key details? And, Mr. Speaker, why is it that Labour councillors are allowed to redraw the boundaries of the very authorities that they hope to represent before any independent review by the Local Government Boundary Commission? And if this process is not about narrow party political advantage, why were Labour MPs and councillors briefed before this House was? If the elections are to happen next year, the government must bring forward the necessary legislation before the House rises. And so I ask that the government breaks with tradition and is open and transparent, avoids diktat from the centre, or is it really the legacy of the Secretary of State to leave things in such a shambles?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question. He said I was desperate to avoid scrutiny. I'm a minister too. I can answer. I'm sure the Secretary of State would agree with me that I have answered a number of Westminster Hall debates on this issue, and we've had debates upstairs on SIs too, and that's absolutely right. Members in this House will have an opportunity to question the government and put their views forward, and they have done already in Westminster Hall debates and on other occasions. And I don't know if the right honourable gentleman missed the point that I said that we are going to make announcements on the remaining areas this week. So I would simply ask him, the day will be decided by the usual channels, and I wouldn't deem to presume decisions taken by the usual channels and by the Speaker. But I would simply say to the right honourable gentleman, if he just has a little patience, then he can give me another go at this when I make the announcement very soon.
And just tell the House, there's no point taking everybody. It's going to be a short brief because we're going to do it all on Thursday when we'll have all the facts before us. If I'd been told earlier, this wouldn't have happened. So there we are. So let's go to the Church Select Committee. Florence Session-Lomé.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I pay tribute to the Right Honourable Member for Braintree for securing this urgent question. The reality is LGR is very complex and involving so many different councils, over 200 councils and services, and delivering services to millions of residents right across the country. And I know that my honourable friend, the Minister, is very able and capable, but there are real concerns being raised by local government. Is she aware of the concerns and comments from the new chair of the LGA, Councillor Eamon O'Brien, where he said that the LGA had previously not taken a position on LGR, but they are hearing from councils about real delivery concerns. This is an area that we've looked at on the Select Committee, where we've raised issues around standards across the housing sector to deliver measures, right measures like the Renters' Rights Act and enforcement. And the LGA raised 6 concerns about these reforms are trying to do too much too quickly with too little. And this poses a real challenge for the vital services that councils and residents need. So can the Minister ensure that the concerns of the LGA are being heard across government and that reorganisation will never take resources away from those critical frontline services, including adult social care, children's social care, that so many of our residents rely on?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for her very important contribution. I meet regularly with the leadership of the LGA for all the reasons that she mentions. These reforms matter so much because councils do very important things. And we've heard from both the Child Poverty Strategy and the Milburn Review the cost of fragmented services to some of the most vulnerable children and young people in this country. So getting this right really matters. As I've said, Mr. Speaker, we've allocated £63 million already to support councils, and I'll have more to say on that very shortly.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Zoe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We Liberal Democrats support genuine devolution because decisions are better made closer to the communities they affect. Yet this Labour government's approach has been top-down, Whitehall diktat from the very start, with councils undermined, residents barely consulted and communities left in the dark about the future of local services, all while councils continue to face significant financial pressure. And I'm deeply concerned that with the member for Makerfield expected to saunter into number 10 within days, members of this House, councils and residents have no clarity about the approach to local government reorganisation that he will take, whether the parameters will change and whether future local elections will be cancelled yet again. So, can the Minister tell the House what discussions she has had with the member for Makerfield about his plans for reorganisation, and will she commit today that no further local elections will be cancelled?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the Liberal Democrat spokesperson asked me what conversations I've had with the member for Makerfield. I mean, mainly about Everton and Liverpool FC, I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker. Resign. Yeah, indeed. But I can say to her that the work of this government to secure devolution and to reshape local government so that we can grow our economy, build homes and serve our constituents properly has been thought through carefully and is proceeding in line with the timetable. And I am sure that all of us, whatever our views in this House, want to see that succeed.
Barry Moon. Oh, he's not standing now. He's changed his mind. Oh, he's standing. No, make your mind up. Gareth Snell then. No.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for her answers? But she will know that local government reorganisation is one half of the coin with devolution on the other. And in places like Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, the access to bus franchising, adult skills agenda, spatial planning is the real victory that we look for. So when the announcement comes this week on the new local authority boundaries, is she able to give any insight into when decisions around strategic authorities will be made and when we might have those first selections to those so we can access those devolved powers that we desperately want to?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his important question, especially given the state of public transport in many parts of this country, and I will take his question as a request for things I might include on a statement further this week.
Sir Bernard Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I draw the Minister's attention to a poll conducted by YouGov, which has now been published, which shows that local government reform in Essex is really unpopular. And what's more, the more people are questioned about it, the more unpopular it becomes. So why won't we have a referendum in Essex to find out whether we really want local government reform instead of it just being something imposed by politicians who think they know better?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for his question. Obviously, like all of us politicians, I pay close attention to opinion polls.
Oliver Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I thank the Minister for her listening ear throughout this process? I know she'll make a bigger statement on Thursday, but can I just make a last-ditch attempt to her, while she's making the considerations, to keep Burnley and Blackburn very separate and to prioritise devolution in Lancashire so we can enjoy with the Mayor things like cheaper buses and business investment that the cities enjoy?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend for his representations. Obviously, I can't respond directly to them, but as ever, I keep the views of members of this House under close watch.
Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In 4 days' time, it will mark exactly 2 years since I first explained to ministers how much the people of Staffordshire Moorlands do not want to be part of a Greater Stoke local authority, do not want to have devolution forced on them, and want to have their own say on who makes decisions about what happens in the Staffordshire Moorlands. So can I please implore the Minister, like my colleague, can we please have a referendum in North Staffordshire on what is going to be imposed on us, because we don't want it imposed, we want to have our say.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sorry to disappoint experienced and knowledgeable right honourable members, but having referenda is not part of the local government reorganisation process. And I think it's very important that we hit the milestones of the timetable as we've set out.
Andrew Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are several options being put forward in Cambridgeshire, Peterborough local government reform, which could benefit Peterborough greatly. Could I ask the Minister to reassure us that we will get the announcement sooner rather than later, whatever the announcement is, so we can prepare? But can I also ask the Minister, did she hear the comments from the member opposite who said that Labour MPs have been briefed in advance about about the details of what's to come? Can I put on record, Mr. Speaker, this allegation has been made against me? I have not been briefed, no information has been leaked to me, and it is a scurrilous rumour. Can I ask the Minister to put on the record that no MPs anywhere know the outcome of this result yet?
Be careful, don't accuse you of protesting too much, though, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's fair to say that I am chomping at the bit to try and make this statement, and I thank you for your support in helping us do that. And I think the honourable gentleman has made his point clear there.
Just to be clear for the record, I think there's been a lot of accusation that people have been briefed. I can assure that I know of no briefing, including myself, which I was hoping I would have had. Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberal Democrat administration at Hertfordshire County Council has made huge strides forward in improving special educational needs and disabilities. And we were delighted when the government lifted the improvement notice which had been imposed when the Conservatives were running Hertfordshire County Council. But just as families are starting to feel the benefit, we're really worried that local government reorganisation could disrupt the delivery of both SEND and social care. So can the Minister say a word or two about what support will be given to make sure that those essential services that support the most vulnerable people will not be disrupted by local government reorganisation?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady for her important and serious point. I've been working very, very closely with my colleagues in DfE on this. We've got a big change process underway. I'd be happy to speak to her about it further.
Rachel Taylor.
Mr. Speaker, and I really welcome the Minister's reassurance that an announcement will be made this week. There's been 2 proposals put forward for reorganisation in Warwickshire, and I, like my honourable friend, would also like to put on record my support for the 2 Warwickshire proposal, because it most accurately reflects how people consider services. But could she also say that the only people who seem to support the one Warwickshire solution are the Reform administration in Warwickshire that have failed to improve services on potholes, on buses, on SEND or on children's services. And therefore the people in my constituency of North Warwickshire and Bedworth will really welcome elections taking place in accordance with the schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend for her contribution. She will understand that until we've made the announcement, there's little I can do to respond to the point that she has made. But I would just say, councils deliver very important public services. That's why we're introducing the local outcomes framework, so that we can see transparently what councils deliver and what they don't.
Lewis Coffey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister and I have had many exchanges on this topic, and I know she knows that I'm focusing on securing the best outcome for my constituents in Broxbourne. And we know that reorganisation in Hertfordshire is coming, but the uncertainty is not helping my residents or local councillors. So can she confirm whether Hertfordshire, an option on Hertfordshire, will be included in the Minister's announcement on Thursday? And can she also confirm whether MPs will be informed before any public announcement is made?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable gentleman for the many exchanges that we have had, and I know that he just wants the best for his constituents, as we all do. Perhaps it might help the House, Mr. Speaker, just to explain that the process that we go through is to provide members of Parliament in affected areas with a short briefing before the announcement is made. That's done for all members of Parliament. That's how the process has happened to date, and that will be my anticipation as and when I am able to make the statement, and then we'll be able to talk more openly once that decision is in the public domain.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister believe, as I do, that if this is done correctly, this has the opportunity not just to reshape local government so that it's fit for the 21st century, but also can help us secure much-needed economic growth?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my friend for Banbury for that really, really important point. This is not just about constitutional niceties or the importance of councils, crucial though they are, to government in this country. This is also about having the right size of authority to grow our towns and cities and to give young people and everybody in this country the opportunities they deserve.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a week's time, we will have a new unelected Prime Minister, the Member of Parliament for Makerfield. Can the Minister confirm whether this honourable member, whether he supports this local government reorganisation, or is he going to reorganise the reorganisation?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last time I checked, the MP for Makerfield had in fact been elected.
Adam Jogi.
Much, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know the strength of feeling in Newcastle and Lyme in support of a Newcastle-only unitary. Can I ask her to confirm that members of this House have not been told about any proposed boundaries or confirmed plans? It beggars belief that apparently some members of the LJ have been notified of some confirmed proposals before this House. And what steps will the Minister take to ensure that local identity, civic heritage and a sense of community will be protected? And in my view, we should support local communities like mine to establish town councils to do just that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend for his question. I've set out the process by which this House will be updated on the decisions, but if the honourable member has evidence of anything else that he's concerned about, he may well write to me if he wants to share that information directly.
Harriet Bowen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In recent weeks in West Worcestershire, I've met with local police, and the Police and Crime Commissioner is being abolished and they're being reorganised. I've met with the local health commissioners, they're being reorganised, and Health Watch is being abolished. And then with district councillors, they're being abolished and their ability to make determinations on planning applications have been taken away. Can the Minister explain how any of this throwing everything up in the air is actually going to help my constituents, in particular the most vulnerable?
Well said.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the right honourable lady for her question. The approach we are taking is to put power in the hands of people and communities so that they can take decisions for themselves, because all the evidence is if people with skin in the game take the decisions, you get better decisions, you get growth and you get better public services.
Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to add to my honourable friend, the member for North Warwickshire and Bedworth's list of people who support a single unitary for Warwickshire, to include me as the MP for Rugby and also the political parties at Rugby Borough Council and at Warwickshire County Council. But as the Minister considers her statement on Wednesday, could she give a little bit more thought to two important stakeholder groups under the new local government reorganisation world, which is MPs? What role are we going to have when there's so much more power and responsibility devolved? And secondly, towns. We need to make sure that towns have as much representation as possible. And I know that she's considered these things, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps I might suggest to my friend that once I've actually made the announcement, that we have a chat and I can talk to him about those things. Although I should say that as somebody who's had mayoral devolution for more than a decade now and represents a great town of Birkenhead, recently shortlisted for Town of Culture, Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of thoughts about this, which I'll happily share with him.
Steve Darling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Torbay Council is the most deprived local authority in the southwest of England. And so I'd welcome the Minister's assurances that rearranging the deck chairs around this local reorganisation will not detract from regeneration, which is a core driver for that local authority. Also, the fact that the potentially new member, the new Prime Minister is set to move, number 10, a further 2 hours away from the west of England. So how will he be supporting the southwest?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure all of the honourable gentleman's questions there were quite central to the subject of this statement, but he makes a really important point, which is what is the objective here? And the objective here is to grow our economy so that we can deal with deprivation, particularly in seaside and coastal places, and to have better quality public services so that they can support people. That is the objective, and that is what I think we'll achieve.
Rich Webb.
Mr. Speaker, and I know I join yourself and other Lancastrian MPs waiting in apprehension for the announcement on Thursday. Blackpool have put their proposal for 4 unitary outline in Lancashire based on us achieving the best possible outcomes for people in Blackpool after losing £1.8 billion under the previous government. So we look forward. I know the Minister won't be able to comment particularly on the choices till Thursday, but can she also outline about Lancashire and the mayoral pathway, because we are moving so far behind Greater Manchester and Merseyside, and we can desperately spend that investment today. So can we ensure that the train on that track, so to say, keeps going?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as a fellow North West MP and fan of Blackpool, I would say to him that he's absolutely right. That's why we need to stick to the timetable. That's why we need to get on with this, so that we can invest in Lancashire, in Blackpool and everywhere else.
Sir Julian.
I'd like to think that if this Minister was Secretary of State, we wouldn't be in a situation where 23,000 people were signing an online petition protesting against the carve-up of the New Forest in this local government reorganisation. But can she tell me, is there any truth in the report in the Times on the 18th of June that said that the Secretary of State, in the case, I believe, of Essex County Council, had overruled professional advice from civil servants in 3 separate government departments to impose a gerrymandered solution on that county council as well?
Absolutely, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question. I'm sorry to say that I have not seen that report in the Times, but I would be very happy to write to him with a response to his question.
Lou Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and apologies for not paying full attention earlier. I thank the Minister for her response to the urgent question. Can she confirm that ministers will be considering representations from councillors and MPs around the interim warding arrangements? There is some concern in Basingstoke and across North Hampshire that urban areas could be disadvantaged by a fewer number of councillors proposed. So will she be considering those representations?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we'll consider representations from all of the stakeholders to this process.
Des Brownfellow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Most areas that will have local elections next year know what their local authority boundary is going to look like, but for residents in West Sussex, they're still completely in the dark. And for my residents specifically in Bursted and Pagham, they're really worried that they're going to be put into a coastal authority that risks being bankrupt on day one. So when the Minister comes to the House on Thursday, will she lay out how that deficit is going to be plugged, a potentially £45 million deficit for a coastal authority in West Sussex? And will she also rule out using one authority to pay for the deficit of the other?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I take the honourable lady's question as a kind of pre-alert to what she would like to know on Thursday, which is helpful, and I thank her for it. As a general point, local government finances are very challenging, and in the end, when a council can't make its finances work, all of us across the country pay the price.
Toby Packard.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. As a former councillor on Chesterfield Borough Council, and given the excellent record that Labour have had there over the last 15 years, it will be a shame when Chesterfield Borough Council ceases to exist and we move towards unitary authority. But I've never met someone in a unitary authority who think it would be better if we went back to two-tier. So I think ultimately we are on the right route with this approach. Can my honourable friend confirm that when she comes to her conclusions, which none of us on this side in Derbyshire are currently aware of, that she will be sticking strictly to the criteria that the government originally laid out?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I can confirm that, and also I would just say, as somebody whose area was reorganised in 1974, there is yet to be a campaign to undo the creation of the Wirral.
That's right. Mark Francois.
Minister, is it true that a statement was made in private to Labour councillors and activists in Essex at the weekend? And I know this for a fact because I was told that by one of the Labour members who was there. So will she confirm that it's true? And is she also aware that the YouGov poll by 56 to 24 shows the people of Essex don't want Labour's plans for local government reform? Let's have a referendum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am now aware of the opinion poll because the Right Honourable Member mentioned it to me a few moments ago, for which I'm grateful. He mentions a meeting that I was certainly not in attendance of, and if he would like to forward the details of that, then I'm sure the department can look at it, but I certainly wasn't at any such meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two-tier government may have worked in the past, but it's not working today, and it's certainly not working for cities like Exeter. We have a two-tier waste authority. We have Devon County Council that's cutting homelessness funding, whilst we have an acute homelessness issue in Exeter itself. I could go on across many other areas as well. Will the Minister confirm that we will be moving ahead with unitary local government across the country, including in Devon and for Exeter? She won't be able to comment on the specifics of any proposal, but in order to make sure that cities like Exeter can grow economically and that local government does serve local people. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman for his point. As I mentioned earlier, there's evidence now from the Child Poverty Review, from the Melbourne Review, that fragmented services are very bad for people who are vulnerable, living in poverty. And there are other examples too. I've heard from the honourable gentleman about his worries for his city, and that's the real purpose behind these reforms.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before the Honourable Lady makes her statement on Thursday, would she, when reflecting on the situation in Wiltshire, that would embrace Wessex, but we've been told that's not the government's view, would she address the prevailing concern that the people in rural Wiltshire will be considerably worse off without having the opportunity to embrace this mayoral region to the tune of £240 per head? And in the context of the wider reduced funding for rural England, they need something from the government to be reassured that they understand the shortfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me just see if I've understood the right honourable gentleman's question. In that the Fair Funding Review was put in place to reconnect funding with need. We think that we've done so in a way that meets the needs of 9/10 of councils now, which is much better than it was before. We take into account additional costs of providing services for rural areas. But when it comes to poverty and deprivation, actually improvements in data now allow us to identify much more closely pockets of poverty surrounded by greater wealth. So I hope that we'll be able to do that for his constituents much better in the future.
Ian Sollum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor is one of the government's flagship regional growth priorities, with a ministerial champion in Lord Vallance to ensure joined-up delivery. Yet if reports that option D is being taken forward for Cambridgeshire are correct, the government will be choosing a structure with no realistic path to viability right at the start of that corridor. So will the Minister confirm what assessment has been made of option D's viability within the corridor and whether Lord Vallance was consulted before the decision?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And obviously there's a limit to what I can say given that the decision will be reported to Parliament later in the week. So perhaps we can come back to this then. But I'm very happy to say, Mr. Speaker, that I've met with Lord Vallance and worked very closely with him.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. The government's proposed carve-up of Hampshire ignores its own preset criteria. It has no mandate, and it splits up East Hampshire. The benefits, if there are any, come way off in the future, whereas the costs and the disruption happen now. Does the Minister think that with the advent of a new Prime Ministership, this would be a good moment to stop in its tracks something that otherwise would make his fiscal task harder?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't, because I think that councils have worked extremely hard along with the timetable that we've set out, and I think it would be a mistake to interrupt that. Councils' costs have spiked terribly in recent years because of central government failure. We're putting that right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Right Honourable Gentleman for Salisbury mentioned, there is a very wild rumour going on in Wessex that a a Labour MP has undermined the 4 councils against the will of the councils, which has been democratically voted on, and without discussing it with any of the MPs, that Wessex, which was ready to go, is not happening. Would the Minister be able to deny this rumour today so I can reassure my councils that this is not happening?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I could spend all my time at this dispatch box confirming or denying rumours, but I think I would be here until Thursday if I did that. I'm sure that we will have further interactions when I make the statement shortly.
David Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Devon, local government reorganisation is taking up a great deal of bandwidth and detracting from what councils should actually be doing. Now, my constituents want to know if this announcement on Thursday will hold beyond the week. So given that the Minister has avoided this question from multiple members today, can she confirm, does the Member of Parliament for Makerfield, the future Prime Minister, agree with the proposed timelines and delivery for local government reorganisation in Devon?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sorry to disappoint the honourable gentleman, but I am not here to answer questions on behalf of the Member of Parliament for Makerfield. But we have set out a clear timetable for local government reorganisation, and the job we should all do is to stick to that, because that's the best way to help councils get on with their jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My residents in Bicester and Woodstock are deeply concerned by rumours that the Cherwell and West Oxford District Councils will be hollowed out in order to create a greater Oxford authority at the behest of Labour councillors in that city. I know that the Minister will not respond directly to that, so may I ask her to respond to this? In Oxfordshire, is it true, as she just said to the member for Chesterfield, that the original criteria set down by the government will be followed? And is it true, as she's just said, in response to the member from Banbury, that growth will be a priority in the decisions made by the government?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the honourable member has indicated, we've set out a process and we're sticking to it.
That now brings us to Alicia Kearns.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nobody asked for this, and the lack of mandate is being compounded by councils like Rutland County Council that are refusing to engage with any opposition councillors. So can I make clear that responses of the Lib Dem Rutland County Council do not represent the views of Rutlanders or indeed the entire council? In Leicestershire, we do not want the Leicester City land grab, and rural Lincolnshire and Stamford do not want to be run by urban Lincoln. So will the Minister consider delaying to make sure that actually all councils have engage with all councillors, because they may be telling you are, but they are certainly not.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable lady. She's made her points very clear there and on the record. The one thing that I do not want to do is delay, because the longer this takes, the less we'll be able to get on with the problems that councils face, looking after our children, our older people and growing our economy.
Mike Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There are a number of options on the table for Kent, and no matter which one the Minister chooses, we will need to do some tidying up of ward and division boundaries, because there are vast disparities between the number of electors in some of the current county council boundaries. Will that be announced alongside the option chosen on Thursday, or if not, when will that information be given?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll take that point that the honourable member has made, and I'll endeavour to give him that information as soon as we can.
Right, that completes the urgent question. Front benches change over. Come to the business statement, change of business. Leader of the House, Selwyn Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with permission, I will make a short statement to provide an update on this week's business. The business for tomorrow, Tuesday the 14th of July, will now be remaining stages of the Public Office Accountability Bill, followed by consideration of Lord's amendments to the Steel Industry Nationalisation Bill. Members who are considering tabling amendments to the Public Office Accountability Bill should consult the Public Bill Office as soon as possible. The Government will ensure that the text of its new amendments is made available to members in the Vote Office straight away. The business for the remainder of the week is unchanged. On Wednesday, the 15th of July, Opposition Day, debate on a motion in the name of the official opposition, subject to be announced, followed by a motion to approve a statutory instrument relating to national security. On Thursday, the 16th of July, the Sir David Amess summer adjournment debate, the subject for this debate determined by the Backbench Business Committee. The House will then rise for the summer recess at the conclusion of business on Thursday the 16th of July and return on Tuesday the 1st of September, and I will make a further business statement on Thursday.
Shadow Leader of the House, Jesse Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to come to the dispatch box now without registering my sadness, and I'm sure everyone across this House, at the dreadful news about Anne Widdecombe. And we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but I just wanted to start with that. The Leader of the House is a good and honourable man, and he will be deeply embarrassed by this fiasco of a procedure today. It is a gross breach of parliamentary protocol and timing to bring a bill, let alone a bill of this sensitivity and magnitude, to the House on this very abbreviated notice. Of course, there is concern about the victims of the bill, of the Hillsborough disaster and their families across this House. But these matters must be properly debated in due season. And to do so, Mr. Speaker, with new amendments that have not even yet been published on no notice, and without the ability of members to amend those amendments or to comment until now, is, I think, a further breach. Mr. Speaker, why has this happened? Because the outgoing Prime Minister is desperate to preserve what he sees as a legacy. It is a tragedy that he should be so focused solely on his own political future, such as it is, and it's a pity, I think, that he's taken this opportunity to sideswipe the incoming Prime Minister, a man who arrives with no scrutiny and no accountability to this House. I raise a couple of key points. Of course, it is understood that this legislation was being discussed in the Intelligence and Security Committee. It is understood that this legislation and its implications were being discussed with our Five Eyes allies, with our armed forces and with the USA in particular. And this abbreviation of protocol is something that I know will attract the attention of the Lords when it arrives in their House. But let me ask the Speaker now, why now? Why has this bill been brought forward on such an expedited basis? What has changed? What actually of substance? What has caused him to want to abbreviate the consideration of these very delicate matters on such timetable? Have our international partners been consulted about this change in procedure? Have the agencies been consulted? And why, above all, after 7 months of grieving families concerned about the passage of it, is it suddenly now, as it may appear with little or no change, being brought forward in front of this House?
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do agree with the Shadow Leader of the House about the tragedy of Anne Widdecombe, and I join with echo his words. I don't agree with him, Mr. Speaker, about the way in which he describes the run-up to this change of business and the fact that the bill will come tomorrow. This is an important bill. We have been signalling for some time that the bill is coming. He knows that because we've had a dialogue about this before, but I've only been able to confirm it today, which has been the earliest opportunity, Mr. Speaker. He talks about amendments. A number of amendments have been laid for a long time on this bill. The government has brought forward further amendments, and they are in the vote office. I do regret that there's not a greater length of time for colleagues to scrutinise that, but they are available, and I'm sure there'll be a way of facilitating a full debate tomorrow. There's been no abbreviation of this process. It's the same programme motion as was agreed by the House at the end of second reading. And I just want to assure the House, as will no doubt come out in the debate, that the agencies have been central to this process, the families have been central to this process, and that's why we have taken time to get it right, which is why it has been delayed. But I say this is an important bill that colleagues will want to see on both sides of the House, will want to see before the summer recess, and that's what we're facilitating.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Leader of the House for this statement and update and this really important bill coming back to the House. But it does raise questions about the Representation of Peoples Act, which has been delayed. a big legislation which would have included key major reforms, enfranchising so many young people, when trust in politics is at an all-time low. This bill also contains provisions around tightening financial donations. I think it's fair to say donations have been in the news for the past few weeks. Can the Leader of the House please ensure that this bill will come back swiftly after the summer recess?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend is absolutely right that the representation of the People's Bill is an important bill, and I will announce in due course when it returns to this House, but it will be returning to this House.
Justin Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Leader of the House for taking this action? I appreciate it's not ideal circumstances, but of course there's been much about the passage of this bill that has been less than ideal. But can I just ask the Leader if he can join me in I hope that tomorrow's debate will be about the substance of the bill and the important amendments rather than the process.
Leader.
I share the hope of my honourable friend. This is an important bill. It is an important matter. Of course, it's about the victims of Hillsborough and about the families and their campaign, which they've needed to wage for far too long. But it is also of profound importance to public service and how we do business in our country, which is why the bill is of such importance.
Dame Harriet Bowler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Leader of the House confirm that since the other place is sitting next week, there is nothing to stop this House and he tabling a business statement to enable us to sit next week as well? Given the enormity of the events happening in the government next week, doesn't the Leader of the House think that would be a good idea?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As I also say it would take the House to agree such a move, and I'm not sure the House is quite ready with the colleagues' faces. But
thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just announced the recess dates. There are no plans to change the dates in which the House is sitting. As you have alluded to, Mr. Speaker, recess dates are agreed by the House in advance to make certainty of parliamentary business for colleagues, and just to reassure the House that the work of government will continue through the recess.
Right, let's move on. Before we come to this statement, I must advise the House that the case relating to Anne Widdecombe's death is not yet sub judice, as charges have not been brought. However, there is a live criminal investigation ongoing, and members should take care not to say anything in this House that might prejudice the future trial. I therefore urge members to avoid speculating about the guilt or innocence of any person, the identity of the person who has been arrested, or the motive for the attack. Members may wish to discuss the general arrangements for security, safety of politicians and other connected matters, but they should avoid discussing the detail of individual members' security arrangements. I now call on the Home Secretary.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a statement about the death of Anne Widdecombe. It is with great sadness that I say those words. My thoughts today are with her family, her friends, and all those who loved her. Anne Widdecombe dedicated her life to politics and public service. For nearly 40 years, she was a fixture of our political life. She brought conviction to our politics, grounded in her profound Catholic faith. She was forthright in her opinions and argued courageously for the things she believed in. But perhaps most of all, she brought an inimitable style to politics. She was forthright and fearless. As Lord Howard of Lymm can attest, she had a memorable turn of phrase, and she was joyful. She thought seriously about ideas, but she did not take herself too seriously, and that allowed her to reach beyond this place and charm the country at large. She was one of those rare politicians who was bigger than politics. There have been so many moving tributes in the last few days, reflecting her impact both within this place and beyond politics. But I think her outlook on life is best summed up by Anne herself. Sitting on Graham Norton's sofa, she said, and I quote, "We get one go this side of eternity, one go. Life is not a dress rehearsal. You take opportunities that you like and you go for it." Anne took her opportunities. She was the proud MP for Maidstone for 23 years, a champion of her constituents. She served the country in government as Minister for Employment and then Prisons, and she took politics out of these ancient walls and became a bona fide TV star. Her contribution to our politics and our national life will never be forgotten. Mr. Speaker, on Wednesday, Anne Widdecombe was murdered in her home. The circumstances of her death are extremely distressing. Counter-terrorism policing have now taken the lead in the investigation. As Lawrence Taylor, the head of National Counter-Terrorism Policing, has said, and I quote, "We now have new information and evidence that means counter-terrorism policing is leading the investigation. We are pursuing multiple lines of inquiry to establish the motivation for this attack." The police now have a suspect in custody, a 28-year-old white British man, and I can confirm to the House that this man was not known to prevent. The police have cautioned against speculating about the case. That is the right thing to do for Anne's family and friends. It is also vital that the police are given the space they need to carry out their work. For now, what matters most is supporting the investigation so that we can see justice delivered for Anne and all who loved her. And I would urge anyone with any information at all to come forward immediately. Mr. Speaker, I know this raises questions about the security of those in public life. I will not be the only one here thinking also of two other beloved members of this House, Joe Cox and Sir David Amess. Politics is a calling for those of us here, but it should not be a dangerous one. And so it is incumbent on the House and the Government to work together to protect those who choose to serve. The Home Office and the police work closely with the Parliamentary Security Department to provide practical advice and support directly to MPs. But we must always be vigilant to changing threats and respond. Security measures are kept under constant review to ensure MPs can carry out their duties safely. And I know that the police intend to issue guidance to MPs soon, and they will be contacting parliamentarians in their constituencies to offer support. I also recently commissioned the former Lord Chancellor, Sir Robert Buckland, to review the lessons from Sir David Amess's murder, including into required improvements to security for MPs working in their constituencies. I recognise the particular concern that the Reform Party will feel today, and of course Nigel Farage, the party's leader. I'm happy to offer a meeting for Mr Farage with the chair of RAVIC, the independent body within the Home Office that manages the security of those in public life. And I will also be looking at what security guidance can be provided to former members of Parliament, which I hope to work with you on, Mr Speaker, as well as those who serve a party outside of this place. Today is a dark day in our political life, but we must also use it as an opportunity to celebrate Anne Widdecombe's memory. She was a unique figure in our politics, a distinctive and devoted public servant, the likes of whom we will rarely, if ever, see again. Anne had a profound faith. Her journey in this life has ended too soon. May she now rest in eternal peace. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Phil.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of her statement. I start by offering my deepest condolences to Anne's family and friends. She will be terribly missed. Anne sat as the Conservative MP for Maidstone for nearly a quarter of a century and in the European Parliament for the Brexit Party. She served in government and in opposition, including as Shadow Home Secretary. She always fearlessly spoke her mind. She did not worry about whether her opinion would be popular or would be fashionable. She always said exactly what she believed and exactly what she thought. Her integrity and her fortitude were unmatched. I first met Anne 29 years ago at a university debate, speaking on opposite sides. I was a callow 21-year-old student. She had just left government and was at the height of her powers. I remember starting my speech by asking her to treat me more gently than she had recently treated Michael Howard. Needless to say, I was put very firmly in my place. Anne was also a much-loved celebrity with memorable appearances on Strictly Come Dancing and Celebrity Big Brother, including being whirled around by, I think it was Anton Dubek. So we will all remember Anne fondly as a public figure who was always formidable, she was always charming, and she was always entertaining. Now, Mr. Speaker, as we discuss this appalling murder, we should heed the words of Devon and Cornwall Assistant Chief Constable Matt Longman, who said at the weekend this: "We are aware of online and public speculation, particularly with regard to motive. I urge people not to share or engage with speculation. It is unhelpful and distressing to Anne's friends and family, and particularly harmful to our investigation." Criminal barrister Dennis Kavanagh also recently pointed out that speculation makes the police's job harder and in some cases could even prejudice a trial. And I urge everyone debating this issue to keep that in mind. Mr. Speaker, it has just been confirmed by the Home Secretary that counter-terrorism police are now leading the murder investigation. So to help avoid that speculation, is there any further information the Home Secretary can properly share about this without prejudicing the investigation? I'd like to thank the police for releasing the information they have so far, including about the identity of the suspect. It is always important to release as much information as possible in the interest of transparency and to avoid misinformation filling the void, as Jonathan Hall KC, the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, has said previously. Let me turn now to threats against those in public life. Any threats against MPs who have been democratically elected to represent their constituents or others in public life should be taken extremely seriously. In the last 10 years, 2 MPs, Joe Cox and Sir David Amess, have been murdered. And now a former MP has been murdered as well. The threat is clearly real. I also remember in 2017 when terrorist Khalid Massoud drove a car into pedestrians along Westminster Bridge, injuring more than 50 people, 4 fatally, and then ran into New Palace Yard, just yards from where we sit here, where he fatally stabbed PC Keith Palmer. That was also an attack on democracy itself. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank you personally for all the work you are doing to protect MPs and those in public life. I know that as the Speaker of the House of Commons, you have made the safety and protection of those in public life your highest priority, and I would like to thank you for that. We must redouble our efforts to ensure that public political figures who are MPs and those like Anne who are not MPs always receive the proportionate protection they need. I'd be grateful if the Home Secretary could confirm that she will review all the arrangements with this objective in mind. I believe in this country we should be able to debate each other robustly on important issues, but should also speak to each other in a way that is civil and respectful. Of course, nothing excuses violent attacks on public figures, but we should all also set an example of civility and calm and not inflame. Mr. Speaker, we need people to step up and become MPs and also speak in the public square. Debate and disagreement are what make our country great. Anne Widdecombe exemplified that every minute of her life. I pay tribute to her. I know we will all remember Anne forever.
Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and let me thank the Shadow Home Secretary both for his own remarks and memories of Anne Widdecombe and also for his questions. Let me say to him that in relation to the new information that has come to light and the progress on the counter-terrorism policing investigation, there is a statement that has been put out by counter-terrorism policing, which I believe has been published online, but I will make sure it is placed in the library of the House as well. The main things to draw out for that are the fact, as I said in my statement, that new information and evidence means that they are now leading the investigation and that they are pursuing multiple lines of inquiry in order to establish the motivation of this attack. As soon as more information is available that is capable of being shared without compromising any future trial process, that will be done. So we take seriously, and I know counter-terrorism policing take very seriously the learnings from the summer of 2024 and definitely to heed the call of Jonathan Hall, Casey and others on timely release of information without compromising the ability to bring someone ultimately to justice, which is of course the main aim when such a horror of an attack happens. Let me also, Mr. Speaker, say I would like to echo the remarks made by the Shadow Home Secretary to you and to thank you personally for all of your efforts in maintaining the safety and security of parliamentarians. I know it's something that you personally worry about and take a deep interest in. Let me also say, given the fast-moving nature of this investigation, I don't want to say anything that will prejudice the direction of travel here. However, there is a question that is raised in this as a result of this murder, which relates not just to the security arrangements for sitting members of Parliament, but for those who have left this place but nevertheless retain a public profile as a result of their political party membership or their political activities. There are also, given the range of new political parties that are contesting the political and democratic space. I think questions about those who are not represented at all here in the House of Commons. And just to reassure you, Mr. Speaker, I will be looking at those arrangements very closely. I will seek to work with Mr. Speaker directly, and my officials will engage with parties across this House and those outside of it to make sure that whatever changes are made are done so in a manner that covers the multiple range of threats that we see. Mr. Speaker, I think there has been a step change in the security of parliamentarians over the last few years, but I think that it is a reflection of the multi-layered threats that our democracy faces and that our active individuals in democracy face, that this is not something we can ever take for granted or believe is settled. It is something that we have to continually review, which we do, and there are new questions that are raised, which I will make it my personal business to answer, and I will update the House in due course.
Member of the House, Diana.
The Home Secretary will be aware of how important it is to make sure that members of this House get the protection and the defence they need. At one point, I got as many threats and abuse and threats of violence as all the other women MPs put together. So I think it's important that we take this issue seriously. I think we should recognise, and I can speak to that because of my years in the House, that this has got much, much worse with the rise of online activity. And so we need to find a way to make some of these online companies more accountable for the threats and the violence that they allow on their platforms. And we need to make it aware, as I just said, the importance of protecting members of Parliament.
Home Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, let me say to the Mother of the House that I think that given the sheer range of threats that have been made to her personally, it is a testament to her personal bravery that she has continued to be an active parliamentarian, but it should not take such levels of bravery to just be able to represent the people of your constituency. And she is absolutely right that we must always make sure that our security arrangements are able to keep pace with the changing nature of threats that members of Parliament are facing. Let me assure her we, as the government, will do that, and we work very closely with the Parliamentary Security Department in order to make sure that that is the case, so that all members can make their contribution just as effectively and for just as long as she has.
Some Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The news about Anne Widdecombe is shocking and deeply distressing. My thoughts are with her family, including her nephew, the Reverend Roger Widdecombe, my constituent, and his wife Hannah, who lead the congregation at St Paul's Church in Cheltenham. Her death is all the more tragic, given what we now know about the upsetting and disturbing circumstances. Anne Widdecombe was a conviction politician and also an entertainer. Many did not agree with her views, including me, particularly when she was briefly my member of the European Parliament. But the style in which she put those views was compelling, and it captured the attention of her nation, just as her dance moves. They were deeply held beliefs, and she was a passionate public servant who was never afraid to challenge those in power, and might I briefly speculate, Mr. Speaker, a strong liberal inclination to challenge power from a strong Conservative politician. I want to pay tribute to the police for their rapid response in this case, and I want to pay tribute to you, Mr. Speaker, for the way in which your office gives security support to MPs. It is important we are able to do our jobs without fear, intimidation or worse. It is, of course, horrifying that there have been 3 politicians murdered in this country in the past decade. Clearly there is more work to be done. Might the government support some amendments to the upcoming Representation of the People Bill to impose a duty on the Electoral Commission to provide more guidance and safety for politicians? And will the Home Office consider supporting some measures so the safety of politicians can be improved? And finally, Mr. Speaker, some alarming allegations were made on the weekend by the Reform Home Affairs spokesperson Zia Youssef. If they are true, these allegations are extremely concerning, but given his record, I think many of us have doubts. I'm certain that the government and the House authorities, including you, Mr. Speaker, are taking seriously the duty of care to members from all parties in this House. But for the sake of the record, perhaps the Home Secretary can confirm that this remains the case.
Let me thank the Honourable Member for his contribution on his three specific issues that he raised on the amendments to the Representation of the People Bill. Let me say to him, I'm very happy to discuss with him. He knows that Home Office is not the lead for that bill, but I'm very happy to have a discussion with him about any additional measures that might be needed in terms of legislation. Of course, the Electoral Commission has its own work to do. It might be better that duties are placed elsewhere, but as I say, I'll happily discuss that with him. And equally, whether there's any further obligations or changes of policy in respect of the Home Office or indeed the Parliamentary Security Department. Again, I'm happy to engage with him and other members across this House. Let me also say, I don't wish to speak for you, Mr. Speaker, but I think all those of us who are members can attest to the fact that all of us are treated equally in this place by the Speaker and also for the purposes of the Parliamentary Security Department when it comes to our safety on this estate and also in our constituencies. Let me say that is a position shared by the government. There is equal treatment for all in terms of the work that we do on security of members of Parliament. There is specific work that is undertaken by RAVEC, which is the independent body within the Home Office that looks at security arrangements for some of those in public life. That work is also fiercely independent. It has been the subject of legal proceedings before, and I've always maintained the independence of that process, and that is based on risk assessment and risk management.
Just for the record, every member of Parliament is equal in the security to me. There is no difference between any member. I want to assure you. When things are brought to my attention, because we don't discuss security, I don't put out there what is happening, what has been done, but I reassure everybody that when it is mentioned to me, it is passed on to the security people to deal with. Unfortunately, I'm sorry that people don't think I do that. Lucy Pell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Home Secretary in paying my respects and condolences to the family of Anne Widdecombe? We might not have agreed politically, but I always greatly admired and respected her outspokenness, her fearlessness, and her ability to not take herself too seriously. I think she was one of a kind, Mr. Speaker, and of the like, frankly, we don't make any more. I think we can all agree on that. I hope that on moments like this, we can come together across the House to talk about these issues as one voice. And can I also place on record my thanks to you, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership in all that you've done over many years in making sure that we're all kept safe and secure. Hear, hear. Does the Home Secretary agree with me, though, that this is not about more than just our security and our safety? It's also about reducing the level of threat. We are now in a highly politicised, highly polarised, highly personalised debate in this country, and that is bringing more and more threats onto all of us. And does she agree with me that we do need to tackle some of the online algorithms and business models which heighten this kind of polarisation and hate towards those in public life, and we must do more to tackle this with urgency?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her contribution and her questions. Let me say, I think she's right that the current climate that we are operating in within our national politics is unlike any that most of us have seen. Those of us who've been around for a while can see the big change that has occurred over the last decade or so, and we do absolutely have to do more as a government and as a society to know exactly what the boundaries are between passionate, contested, fierce debate of the kind that Anne Widdecombe herself engaged in, and then behaviour that spills into threats and harassment of the kind that is designed to drive people out of public life. And getting that balance right, I think, is absolutely crucial. I think it is clear that there is more work for the government to do. There is more work for us to do across society. That includes social media platforms taking greater responsibility for the kinds of behaviours that are promoted on their platforms. And I can assure her that I will be discussing this with colleagues across government to make sure that we are responding to all of those challenges.
Dame Karen Bradley, Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Like many on this side of the House, I have very fond memories of Anne. She made the effort to travel to Staffordshire Moorlands. Not many people do. We're quite an isolated area. And she came to Consul... Yes, they come to Alton Towers. The Honourable Gentleman is quite right. But she came to Consul Hall Gardens, as it was then, to do a fundraising dinner for me. And she delivered a tour de force, which I suspect the then Prime Minister, the noble Lord Cameron, might not have entirely approved of. But my association were totally enraptured and thought it was the most wonderful event, and it's still fondly remembered in the association. Not least because she told me I had to take my heels off because I was going to stand far too tall next to her in the photographs, and that was not appropriate. Can I also thank Staffordshire Police for contacting me this weekend and making a visit to my home to review my security arrangements at home. I know police forces across the country will be doing that, and I'm very grateful to them for taking that time. But could I ask the Home Secretary to comment on what might happen in the longer term around the prevent duty? She will know that the Home Affairs Select Committee did produce a report on new forms of radicalisation and extremism, and we have some recommendations which we hope might be able to help the law enforcement and others to find those that have a tendency towards violence. Could I ask her if she will consider that in the longer term?
Home Secretary.
Let me say to the Honourable Lady, she makes a really important point actually on the prevent duty and the changing nature of the threat and the consequences that has for the prevent programme. I think it's absolutely essential that we retain a de-radicalisation programme that is focused on ideology, but as she knows, and as those who are also expert in these matters know, the range of threats and the link between ideology, mixed ideology, occasional ideology, mental health and other issues is now asking us a bigger question about how the prevent strategy works in the future and how we deal with the threats that fall outside of that through wider and other societal programmes. I will absolutely look at the recommendations her committee makes, and I hope to discuss those with her committee when I appear before them, hopefully very soon.
Member of the Speaker's Conference on Security, John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I send my deepest sympathy and condolences to the friends and family of Anne Widdecombe, and also extend that to her former colleagues from the Conservative Party and the Reform UK Party, for whom I know this must be a very difficult and sad time. I want to put on record, Mr. Speaker, that you chose that the subject of the Speakers' Conference for this Parliament would be the security of MPs, candidates and elections, and we have done good work on in the Speakers' Conference, but there is much more to be done, as I'm sure we can all agree. So will the Home Secretary confirm that she will work closely with you, Mr. Speaker, and the Parliamentary Security Department and all others who care about protecting our democracy from the threats that sadly are growing?
Absolutely give that assurance to my honourable friend. I will pick up a discussion with Mr. Speaker and others on how we think about security for those who are no longer members of this place and also the specific new circumstances that are raised by Anne Widdecombe's murder. And I'm happy to work across party and across all of this House and indeed with the Speakers' Conference as well.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are all reeling with shock, sadness and anguish at the loss of our Anne, and also the manner in which she has been taken from us. She was a colossus in public life, in political life, a legend adored and loved by millions and millions of people, including my own late mother, for whom she spoke so very warmly of Anne. She was a remarkable lady. She had an incredible work ethic. She would think nothing of going the length and breadth of the country to speak at rallies. She was an incredible orator who always spoke without notes. Absolutely remarkable. And her philosophy to life, the Home Secretary touched on it, She viewed life as it's not a dress rehearsal. You grasp every opportunity. You go for it as far as possible. Her career, her political career here, Mr. Speaker, I checked earlier. In 23 years, she made over 8,000 contributions in this place, and some remarkable witty interventions. When an honourable member said that she should disappear with her broomstick, she immediately replied, "I have my broomstick and I will cast a spell over you." and that was her nature. Likewise, her media career was also remarkable. She was an agony aunt in 2 programmes. She was a most deserving semi-finalist in Strictly Come Dancing, for sure. And of course, Celebrity Big Brother. And she was an incredible panto performer that was adored by so many. Her conviction, her passion, and her advocacy for free speech was to be commended. I had the honour of working with her for the last 7 years, and despite being a foot taller than her, I somehow always found myself looking up to her. And she also, when she phoned, I always stood up on my toes, incoming, beware. And that was Anne, and we will miss her dearly. And I also think that the Scottish whisky industry has lost a very discerning customer. And maybe there could be a limited edition, Widder's Whisky, where the tasting notes may reflect unique, unforgettable flavours, a fiery, spicy series of tones, but a blend to be treasured to eternity. May she rest in peace, Mr. Speaker. And I just asked the Home Secretary in conclusion, could she ensure that the counter-terrorism unit keep us updated on as regular possible basis? And given the nature of these things, we all want our police forces to do brilliantly, of course. Would it be wise, when considering motivation, when giving us early updates, to keep things being open-ended as opposed to motive, as opposed to ruling things out too quickly that may then end up being ruled back in? Yeah.
Well, let me first say to the honourable gentleman that was a very moving and affecting tribute to Anne Widdecombe. Let me say on Widder's Whisky, as a teetotal Muslim, I would never be able to partake of such a drink, although if there is a non-alcoholic version available, I will happily imbibe. Let me say to him, we will of course make sure that as and when it is possible to share more information about the circumstances of the murder and the motivation that is done so in the appropriate way, and also to reassure him at no point has anything been taken off the table in terms of the investigation. It's a live investigation. It is not unusual in these matters that in a fast-paced investigation, more information comes to light that changes the nature or the character of what we think we are dealing with. And I am reassured that Devon and Cornwall Police have been working really closely with counter-terrorism policing, and as soon as this additional information was made available, counter-terrorism policing have taken over as is appropriate and as is the right thing to do.
And I would like to share the sentiments that have already been expressed and send my deepest condolences to the family and friends of Anne Widdecombe. And of course, security is a huge issue to all of us in this chamber, and I'm sure I was not the only one this weekend who went about my business in the constituency looking over my shoulder more than I normally would. And it's terrible that this is the third Member of Parliament and ex-Member of Parliament to have been murdered. But it shouldn't be like this. And whilst I thank the Speaker for everything he's doing, and I have already heard from my Operation Bridge of Contact this morning about my security and is everything okay, which I'm really delighted to have heard from, it does seem that security fob and security in our houses is not really enough. And so I'd just like to ask the Home Secretary what more she can do to work with the Parliamentary Security Department and with the Speaker to make sure that our security is not undermined.
I thank my honourable friend. Let me say to her, we wouldn't, of course, ever comment on the specific nature of the arrangements that are made for members of Parliament for their security, either here on the estate or in their homes or constituencies either. However, let me assure her that there are a number of measures that are taken and that for local policing, as well as working with the Parliamentary Security Department, there is an offer for all members of Parliament, and then there are also specific risk assessments as well when there is something for an individual, something of concern relating to a particular individual. So let me just reassure her that I think those arrangements are comprehensive. However, we should ask ourselves always whether they are enough and whether they are responding to the changing nature of threats or the spike in threat activity that we sometimes see as well. And let me assure her I will, of course, be working closely with the Parliamentary Security Department and policing more broadly to make sure these arrangements are as tight and as robust and as comprehensive as they need to be.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I apologise to you and to the House that the fact that I have to chair a meeting in a few minutes' time prevents me staying as I would wish to do till the end of the statement. When I went up as an undergraduate to Oxford in late 1970 and joined the University Conservative Association, there were two outstanding figures a year ahead of me in that august body. One was Anne Widdecombe and the other was Nicholas Turner. And a few years later, in February 1980, Anne Widdecombe and I shared a taxi to the funeral of Nicholas Turner, who had heroically sacrificed his life in an attempt to rescue his young daughter Alice. It was a double funeral, who had been swept into the sea by a freak wave. Anne was always there when her friends needed support. And on a lighter note, she was always there ready to bring her friends back down to earth. So when she was elected, I think in 1987 for the first time, and I happened to be moving flats, I gifted her a relatively new washing machine that was now surplus to my requirements. And for several years after she became an MP, she used to invite me once a year, almost like clockwork, to have lunch with her in this place. And I naturally assumed that it was that she wished to imbibe the wisdom of my political advice. It was only by accident that she once revealed when I suggested that to her and how flattered I was. She said, "Oh, no, Julian." She said, "This is rent for the washing machine." Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, Mr. Speaker will certainly remember that in 2008 to 2009, this House spent a lot of time taking steps to ensure that MPs' home addresses did not in future have to be revealed either in answer to freedom of information requests or on ballot papers and notices of nomination. And it therefore comes as a bit of a shock to me to read in one of the reports today that Anne had, and it may turn out to be complete coincidence, featured in her home on a programme on television extensively only 6 days before she died. And it said that the name of the home had been obscured, but there is software available that if you put up a picture of a place, particularly if you know the general area where it is, it will identify the address. So may I please appeal to members and ex-members from whatever political party, do not throw away the gains we made, and whatever else you do, keep your home addresses as private as you possibly can.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think the Honourable Gentleman makes some really wise points on the safety of MPs' home addresses. And let me just say to him, I will make sure that in the work that I carry out alongside the Speaker on the lesson to be learned from the circumstances of Anne's murder, I will make sure that the privacy and security of home addresses is something that we consider.
Florence Eshalomi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I join in paying tribute to the many heartfelt tributes for Anne Widdecombe from members right across the House. I didn't know her personally, but as someone thinking about before I came to this place, there are many names that you always come across, and hers was definitely one of them. And may her gentle soul rest in peace. I wanted to ask the Home Secretary about the area that many members have already raised. I spoke to a group of students earlier this afternoon, students who were completing work experience in shadowing. And one of the young girls asked me, what are the downsides and what do you not like about this role? And it pained me, to be honest, to them to say the death threats and the abuse that you get just because you are doing something that you love and something that you enjoy. And we have to be honest about the real life threats being faced by parliamentarians right across the House just for doing the job that they really enjoy. So I asked the Home Secretary, can she confirm that it is good that counter-terrorism police are leading this, that they have all the necessary resources they need to be able to carry out this full and thorough investigation, because there are many competing demands that they will be dealing with in our ever unstable and global world. And can she also confirm that in addition to some of the misinformation that's been spread online, we look at the area which the Mother of the House did mention around that online misinformation, that targeting. I'll declare an interest, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do sit on the Speaker's Committee on Electoral Commission, and this is one of the areas we have looked at. And just to add my tributes and thanks to the Speaker for the work that he's done on this in terms of the Speaker's conference. I know that whenever I've raised issues, and to thank the Parliamentary Plate team, they have taken that really important. And it's important that we don't deter future people for standing for public office.
My honourable friend is absolutely right to say that we must make sure that people aren't either driven out of politics or put out of entering political life at all, and it's incumbent on us all to work together to make sure that whenever we're asked that question about the downsides of public life, that we're able to give a positive view because it's a truth rather than where we are today. On the resourcing for counter-terrorism policing, let me assure her they do have the resources they need. I had an extensive discussion and briefing from the head of National Counter-Terrorism Policing, and I'll be kept updated on their progress and in particular as to whether they need any more from us at the Home Office. We stand ready to offer greater assistance, but I'm assured at the moment that they have everything they need.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Madam Deputy Speaker, on Friday was a funny day because I heard the news very early in the morning that Anne had died. I must say I was utterly surprised over that because she seemed perfectly fit the last time that I saw her. So I gave my condolences and spoke on the radio about it. And only sadly later that day, just after lunch, did I discover it wasn't sad, it was a tragedy. A tragedy that a phenomenal woman, a member of this House, me to think back to this woman who was a force of nature. She was impossible to argue with because she never accepted that she was losing the argument until finally she was able to turn it 180 degrees and make you feel guilty that in actual fact you'd even dared to argue with her at that time. And I particularly remember during the Maastricht debates, of which I have to confess I and one or two others here were deeply rebellious, and I got a lecture from the dispatch box when she was in government about how I should support the Maastricht Treaty and the European Union, which rather worried me. And I have to say, it's rather ironic now when I turn out that she's gone over to reform. I thought to myself, now there's somebody that takes the brief that you have collective responsibility more than she even had to, I said, so rather remarkable. And she was a remarkable woman in many, many cases, and I got to know her during Shadow Cabinet, when we would debate and argue. She argued as robustly in Shadow Cabinet as she did across the dispatch box. You were the enemy, no matter whether you were Labour or Conservative, you disagreed with her. And you got used to it, and it was phenomenal, really, because she was so certain about the way that she was. But she embodied something else, Mr. Speaker. The passion that is necessary in this chamber for us to make our arguments without fear of any other person doing something to us. We have that because we're there. The second thing she imbibed and completely demonstrated was the peculiar, unique responsibility that we have to our constituents and the nature that we have, which I don't think is replicated almost anywhere else. The personal contact we make with constituents going into their homes. I don't ask for security when I go into someone's home. You go in to see them if they're too ill to come and see you. We all do this. I know we do. And we do not want to lose that. We do not want the epitaph of her terrible murder to be that we withdrew from the nature of who we are and what makes this place so great. And I simply say we need to reiterate, and the government, if I don't mind saying to the Home Secretary, needs to specify to all those social media companies, they must do something to close down on the visceral, violent language that some people use, attacking personally, as they did over her murder, which has shocked me, to make sure we get on top of that, because that is the root of violence and death. It is not only her that has been murdered. It is not only Joe Cox or David Amos, my good friend, that has been murdered. But the rack up here shows that terrorists have murdered many in our party. And I say, if we want to stop that, we have to be bold, we have to be clear. We will not accept being shut down, being stopped from our duties, or being silenced in any way, because that is what Anne would have approved of.
The honourable gentleman makes some very powerful points. He's absolutely right. I think it is not sad, it is a tragedy now that we know a little more of the circumstances of this murder, and more will obviously come to light in the fullness of time. Let me say I agree with him. I think as a society, as a government, we are all going to have to do much more on holding social media platforms to account for what is said and done through their platforms. I think that some progress has been made, but it feels like it takes a long time to get legislation through, many years before any of it can be implemented, and this is a very fast-moving environment, and getting that balance right between fierce and contested debate and then the behaviour that gets you into threats and visceral abuse and harassment, I think is incumbent on all of us, and I hope that we're able to work together across this House to achieve the necessary balance and the necessary regulation of social media that we need.
Justin Matters.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I add my condolences to those of the Home Secretary and other members to the family of Anne Widdecombe. May she rest in peace. I just want to flag up, if I may, the concerns I have, not just about members of this place, but actually our party members, our councillors, our council candidates. Every week in my constituency, volunteers go knocking on doors, and I have to say most of the responses we get are absolutely fine, but there is an increasing trend for violence and aggression on the doorstep, and these are people who are giving up their own time to engage in the political process, and they should not be met with violence and intimidation. So we absolutely need to do far more than we are to tackle the causes of this division and aggression. I absolutely agree with what members have said about social media companies and the algorithms peddling hate, but we also need to look at what we can do. I've put some amendments down to the representation of the People Bill to deal with misleading information online, but also statutory code of conduct dealing with prevention of abuse and intimidation in campaigns. I think there's more we need to do, and in particular I'm concerned that actually we're putting off the next generation of members of this place by making it so intimidating on the doorstep. We need a wholesale review and real action to protect everyone who does their bit in democratic life.
Well, my honourable friend makes some really important points. Just as joke candidates are a feature of British democracy, so is knocking on doors at election time and talking to people up and down the country. And I think all of us have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that the unique features of British democracy are protected at all times. And that has also been the work of the Defending Democracy Task Force, which my honourable friend, the Security Minister, who's now the Defence Secretary, has led on, and which the new Security Minister has taken over. Let me assure him we'll do everything we can to protect the norms by which our democracy is felt across our country, and how we all take part in it is protected. Let me say to him, this has come up from other members as well, on potential amendments to the representation of the People Bill. I will undertake, that is not a Home Office lead as a bill, but I will undertake to members of the House today that I will discuss this with colleagues in government and make sure that we respond on specific amendments, or at least on a body of work, to make sure that any additional amendments made to that bill are capable of reflecting the nature of the challenge that we face.
Pete Wishart.
The news about Anne Widdecombe was truly shocking, compounded by the fact and the way that she had met her death. And the thoughts of my party, the Scottish National Party, are with her friends and family today. As has been said, Anne was a larger-than-life political figure, liked by people right across this House for her wicked sense of humour and her straight-talking. I remember when I inadvertently strayed into a private Conservative event to be met by Anne, sending me packing. And I could say something, Madam Deputy Speaker, for somebody of her stature, she was a very effective bouncer. Now, there is great interest in this tragic death, beyond those with an obvious interest in politics. And there will be this temptation to speculate about her death, including with those with more malevolent intent on social media. So can the Home Secretary do everything she can to ensure that the information that's passed on about this particular case is correct and right, and do everything possible to counter those bad bits of misinformation?
It's incredibly important that nobody indulges in any speculation of any kind, and for those that do, that we all collectively call them out as well, that people exercise caution before they comment on this case. For those who wish to see justice done, that is the right way to behave, and that is what we should all want, the proper functioning of our criminal justice system, which does require careful handling of information. We will obviously, wherever possible, step in to correct misinformation, as the police have done as well, but occasionally in these sorts of cases, the police are constrained as to what they can put out in the public domain because they wish to protect proceedings that may follow in the future. And so for all of us, I think we have to be vigilant and we have to be careful and we have to send out the right message from this House as to what our expectations are.
Helen Dollymore. Madam Deputy Speaker, can I join members across the House in giving my deepest condolences to the friends and family of Anne Widdecombe. I never had the privilege of meeting her, but I certainly remember growing up, seeing her on the TV and thinking what an outspoken, strong woman she was that wouldn't take no for an answer. So I want to pay tribute to her as well. I don't want to speculate on the case or what happened, but I do wish to place on record my concern about the fact that we are seeing very frequently the media either photograph or broadcast identifiable details of members or former members' homes. That is happening repeatedly to members across this House, members of the Cabinet, members of the Shadow Cabinet, and to former members. And we've heard today about the risks that could come with that. I know that the former member for Surrey Heath mentioned in a podcast fairly recently that the man who killed Sir David Amess visited his home from details he had identified from the media, and that's how serious this is. So given the risks that we know exist about this, I know this is something the Speaker's Commission has looked at as well, and the new tools that are existing out there, like reverse image searching, which makes it easier to look at a media image to then find out where that house is on Google Maps. Could the Home Secretary urgently look at this issue, together with her colleagues in DCMS and also the media regulators, Ofcom and the Independent Press Standards Authority?
Here. Yes, let me thank my honourable friend for that question, and to assure her that this is one of the issues that I will pick up, as I said, in answer to a question from one of the members opposite a little earlier in this statement, and I shall discuss with colleagues on a cross-party basis and with Mr Speaker and the House authorities on what more we can do when it comes to the specific details relating to the homes of members and former members of Parliament.
Jenkins. Speaker, can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement and her tribute to Anne, which was extremely moving, if I may say so. Can I also just point out the unfortunate statistical fact that as a Member of Parliament you are more likely to meet a violent death than a member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces or a member of the British Police Forces. And can I just ask you, Madam Deputy Speaker, to assure Mr Speaker that none of us doubt his personal commitment to our security, but this remains a very relevant problem because none of us want our homes to be turned into fortresses, but maybe more people need to be encouraged to put, for example, security gates on the front of their houses and to have security cameras watching and recording what is going on, rather than just relying on the ring bell that happens to be on your front door. Can I just also pay tribute, my own tribute to Anne, that much has been already said, and I shared 18 years of her parliamentary life alongside my right honourable friend, the right honourable member for Chingford Wood and Green, the disagreements about Maastricht, the disagreements about women candidates. My goodness, she loathed me trying to promote women candidates in the Conservative Party. And I maintain she was wrong about that. But she was right about many things. Her maiden speech was actually about the Trident nuclear deterrent at a time when the Labour Party was a bit wobbly on that subject, and the Liberal Democrats. But what a testament to, what an emblem of her patriotism and fervour for strength and clarity of purpose. And I would also just point out, I served in Shadow Cabinet with her when the government were introducing the Human Rights Act and our close adherence to the European Convention on Human Rights. She was the one member of the Shadow Cabinet said we should oppose this, when there were members of our Shadow Cabinet saying that we should relish joining it. And she was right. And her prescience has often invited derision from others. But she was right on that score. We're learning the lessons that she left behind in her life. Maybe other parties will learn them too.
Yeah, well said.
Well, let me say to the Honourable Gentleman, that was also a very moving tribute to someone that he clearly was very fond of and worked with very, very closely. He has dared to say that she was wrong. Perhaps if we listen clearly, we can hear her saying something in response to him that was probably quite forceful in its own way. Let me say to him, I take very seriously, and I know Mr Speaker takes very seriously, the security of all members of Parliament. And actually, as we consider what has happened to Anne Widdecombe, we now must, I think, live up to our responsibilities for former members of Parliament as well. And let me just assure him I will take my duties in that regard very seriously. I do not want it to be the case that you are more likely to die a violent death if you're a member of this great House. This great House has great public servants in it from all over the country, from every party, and the public service of all members of this House is something without which our country cannot do, and it is incumbent on all of us to protect that for this generation and for generations to come.
Alan Gemmell. Madam Deputy Speaker, my thoughts and condolences are with the family and friends of Anne Widdecombe and the colleagues who worked closely with her on the benches opposite. It's hard not to see the murder of an ex-MP as an attempted attack on this place and our way of life, but we must not let it have a chilling effect on those who want to stand for public office. Can I thank Madam Deputy Speaker, Mr Speaker, for the time he took with new intake MPs in 24 to give us his hints and tips and also really focus on security. And could also thank the Home Secretary for looking at the safety and risks for ex-MPs. As someone who's in almost daily contact with one of their predecessors, I'm sure it will come up in our next phone call. And can I let the member for Boston and Skegness know I have a call with the Scotch Whisky Association this afternoon, who I think want to talk about the FTA, but I'll very happily talk about Widow's Whisky. Does the Home Secretary agree we must do all we can to ensure that people are not put off standing in public life, particularly with online hate and the increasing violence that we see on doors and in our society?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. We all must do more. Let me assure him the government will work closely with Mr Speaker and the Parliamentary Security Department to make sure that we're doing everything that we can. But as I said in answer to other questions during the statement, as a society, I think we have to take a stronger position on the right boundary between contested debate and then unacceptable behaviour and abuse online. And I know that we'll have more work to do in this space.
Ellie Chams.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the Green Party, I'd like to say how shocked and saddened and horrified I am by Anne Widdecombe's horrific death, her brutal murder. And my sincere condolences go to her friends and family and all who knew her and loved her, including colleagues in this House. And I welcome the points that the Home Secretary has made about reviewing security arrangements for those in public life, including former MPs and those outside this House, and very much agree with her in terms of the responsibility that we all have across this House and beyond to avoid speculation in order that the police can do their vital investigation and bring the culprit to justice. She's recognised the calls that have been made from across this House today for further action to tackle the proliferation of polarisation and indeed hatred online. And can I press her further to set a timescale for taking that further action in order to protect not only the safety and security of all those in public life, but the fundamentals of our democracy. Thank you.
Thank the Honourable Lady for her contribution and her question, and just assure her that I will be picking up a discussion with my colleagues across government on how we do more on social media platforms and the sorts of behaviours that are promoted on social media platforms that we know are having a very damaging impact on our democracy, but also in the safety and security of people involved in politics in different ways, both as activists and then also as elected representatives. Specifically, I will be discussing this matter with colleagues in the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, in DCIT and others, and I will ensure that the House is updated soon after the summer recess.
Al Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd just like to echo the thoughtful and meaningful comments across the House today. Now, I didn't know Anne Widdecombe, but I definitely knew what she stood for. Public service. She was a unique character and an amazing public servant of many years of sacrifice. How have we ended up in a position of where an individual or individuals collectively across the House spent so much time and effort into public service, but yet we are at risk? One of the reasons is that when we were young, Madam Deputy Speaker, we would walk into a library and the librarian indeed was apolitical. She or he would allow us to read whatever we wanted within a set boundary. But now, Madam Deputy Speaker, that librarian is no longer apolitical, it's an algorithm. And that algorithm is bought for by anyone from American tech bros to Russia and China and others. It's not a 4 or 5 different threats, they are one consistent threat, and one that is swaying the minds of large chunks of populations across the globe. So I was wondering if the Home Secretary could give me some detail on how we're clamping down on some of that adversarial and nefarious activity and making online activity much safer.
I thank my honourable friend for that contribution. He will know that colleagues in DCIT are working very carefully on the Online Safety Act and its further implementation and learning lessons from how it is applying so at the moment to think carefully about what might need to be done in the future. But I think it is clear that we need a much stronger and better policed boundary between what is acceptable in a democracy and behaviour that we know is challenging the very foundations of our democracy. And as I say, I've undertaken to have that discussion with colleagues across government, and I will make sure that the House is updated as to a programme of work that the government intends to take forward to make sure that all of our arrangements here are as robust as possible, and that it is we, the people of this country, that decide the sort of inheritance that we wish to leave for our children, and not algorithms decided by a very small number of men who live abroad.
Mark Francois. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank both frontbenchers for their very touching tributes to Anne? And for the benefit of those outside this House, can I place on record that we all know the absolute personal commitment of Mr. Speaker and all the Deputy Speakers to the security of all members and of their families? And can we thank him and the rest of the team for that?
Yeah, well done, Mark.
We mustn't comment on the investigation, but can we at least wish the police Godspeed in bringing whoever was responsible for this utterly heinous act fully to book? We've now lost another fallen comrade. Joe Cox, Sir David Amos, and now Anne, and years ago others to Republican terrorism too. This is a challenge for all of us and for our loved ones. And I do believe, as I said after David was murdered, the social media companies have a responsibility in this too. You always needed a thick skin to come into politics. You now need the hide of a rhino. And they could do something to calm down the level of hate to which honourable members and their families are exposed online. And I look to the Home Secretary in the hope that something positive could be done there. Anne Widdecombe was unmissable. She was a one-woman nuclear deterrent. Whether she was debating in the House of Commons or arriving on Strictly by zipwire. I saw her only about 3 weeks ago at a breakfast meeting, and she was in fine fettle that morning. I knew her through Sir David. They were great friends. They came in a similar era in the 1980s. They had a strong bond via the Catholic faith. They got on extremely well. I appeared in a number of photographs with both Sir David and Anne down the years, but for some reason I was never asked to remove my shoes. I have one brief anecdote. In 2010, having obviously upset someone in authority, I was made the government accommodation whip. And it was my responsibility to hand out officers. Now, anyone who's ever done this job will tell you it's not easy. And Anne, who had retired from the House, had a very, very attractive office overlooking Parliament Square. And that was on my list of one that I knew would be in high demand. So when I went along to check it out, I found Sir David already neatly ensconced in the office. And when I asked him how this had come about, he told me he was claiming squatters' rights, and moreover, that he had been bequeathed the office by Anne as a personal gift. And when I sought to remonstrate, he told me that if I didn't like that decision, I could take it up with her personally. At which point I decided that discretion was the better part of valour and withdrew.
Right.
She was remarkable. You couldn't argue with her. Well, you could try, but you never got very far. And she's the type of character that people deeply respected because she was absolutely consistent in her view, whether you agreed with her or not. And we have lost a distinguished and incredibly remarkable colleague in the most awful of circumstances. But Anne Widdecombe would tell us to keep calm and carry on. And I believe that's exactly what we should do.
That was a very moving and funny set of memories from the honourable gentleman, very affecting. And let me say to him, keeping calm and carrying on are definitely words to live by, and we could all do with taking that lesson on board. And also let me just echo what he said in terms of our best wishes for the police as they continue this investigation. Godspeed.
Suella Braverman. Speaker. Anne's tragic murder has shocked the nation. Dear Anne was the personification of political courage, patriotic tradition and the importance of faith. Immense support
completely unacceptable. I know an apology is made. Comment ADI News. Reacted at comments identical views then let me say and at that behaviour and who has lost her life tragic circumstances, no politics or in our hope that that, and I would urge all to the wherever they mix and hit the send but social message a little touch in these circumstances.
Speaker, can I thank some speakers for everything? Parliamentary security
all members safe. For also the of reform for as well. As a West Midlands anti-terrorism policing and also House. One problem that was in 2009. In 2009 to step down. Actually, we met with her. Would you do it? She's going to go and speak to the up in committee rooms, usual, and you've got to don't say you're standing down. And of course, as we that advice, integrity, authenticity, a lexicon of virtue. And of course, she was recognised by His Holiness the Pope with a papal damehood at DSG, but she was unfortunately, I think unfairly, never recognised in this country in the same way, and I hope that is something in her honour and memory that could be considered. Thank you. Good point.
Well, again, let me say to the honourable gentleman, those are some lovely memories that he has shared with the House of his dear friend. As he was making his contribution, I thought I would follow what he had said in relation to counter-terrorism policing and just place on the record my gratitude for our counter-terrorism policing across the country. We actually have a world-leading counter-terror policing operation in this country. We are very lucky to have them. They do a great job keeping all of us safe, and I know I speak on behalf of the whole House when I place those remarks on the record. He is right. Many members have made this point today about the unaccountability of social media platforms for their algorithms and for the type of content that they host on their platforms. The government has already done some work in this area, but I'm sure we will have to go further, and as I've committed before, I will make sure the House is updated in due course.
Roberts. I speak on behalf of my party, Plaid Cymru. I think we will remember where we were when we heard the news once again that, in this case, a former member of Parliament, but somebody who lived the same lives as ourselves, died in such a hideous, shocking way in the murder. And of course, it is the work of the police and the justice system now that must come first and foremost. And I was with North Wales Police in training many of their officers on Operation Bridger only on Friday afternoon, just before this happened. And I do commend them, but also I think we really need to know how difficult it is for the police, because what Operation Bridger does has to go down to the front line. The front line need to be alert to that. And I must also mention the importance of Operation Ford for Senedd members in Wales, other national parliaments elsewhere, and also for councillors, because the ability of elected representatives, all of us, to do our job by being available to meet constituents and speak directly to them is precious. We need to be alert to keeping that. The trust that goes with being able to meet people is precious. So does she agree with me that we're not just talking about protection for ourselves for this year, for a few years to come? What we're doing here, what we are endeavouring to do here, is to safeguard the values of democratic debate over violence into the future.
think the Honourable Lady is absolutely right. When I was first elected in 2010, I used to run an open, first-come, first-served advice surgery, and now that is no longer possible. And in the last few years, I've had to change, still offer advice surgeries, but on very different terms to when I first became a Member of Parliament. And it's a huge change, actually. It's entirely as a result of what happened to Joe Cox and to Sir David Amos. And it's a tragedy because it does change the way that you relate to your constituents. It is a very precious thing that we must protect, that connection between Members of Parliament and those that they represent, between councillors and those that they represent as well. That is the work that the Government and the Parliamentary Security Department, Mr Speaker, and all of his team here in the House are determined to see through, to make sure that even if there are some changes in the way we relate to our constituents, that we are still able to do so on terms that we would all recognise as good old British democracy at its best.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are no words to express the sadness that we feel about the passing of Anne Widdecombe, but the sadness, unfortunately, is turning to anger. Anger not just at the social media companies, but also all of us in this place and the politicians and some of the language that we use in this place. And Reform UK MPs have been labelled as racist, as Nazis, as bigots by people serving in this place, and that undoubtedly increases the risk of attacks on politicians on this side. But is the Home Secretary aware of any increased risk to Reform UK MPs?
Let me say to the honourable gentleman, I think that it is important that all members of the House are careful and calm in the way that we describe other members of this House and the work done by other members in this House. I think that we have to imagine how we would feel if we were on the receiving end of that and try to treat others the way we wish to be treated ourselves. And I would certainly want to make sure that I say from this dispatch box for myself and for the government that any abuse or harassment of members of Parliament to other members of Parliament is unacceptable as well. We should all moderate our language. We also have to get the right balance in this place between fierce and contested political debate, which happens on both the right and the left of the spectrum, and then also making sure that we don't slip into behaviours that increase threat to any of our colleagues. It is a difficult balance sometimes to strike in the heat of the moment, in the heat of a very polarised debate, but we still have a responsibility to show our best selves at work, as it were, and I would always caution all members, before you say anything quickly, just take a minute to reflect and then think about what you're about to say. Let me say to him on specific threat, no, I am not aware. He knows that I wouldn't ever comment on threats because, or indeed arrangements that are in place for any member or indeed others in public life, only because to comment starts to affect the integrity of the overall system. But I will make sure, as I've said, that in relation to the leader of Reform UK, that he's offered a meeting with the independent chair of RAVEC to discuss specific issues relating to risk assessment. And if there are any other matters in relation to risk assessment, I know that the police are monitoring that very carefully and will discuss with all political parties in this House any additional changes that they might wish to make.
Robert Jenrick.
Can I join colleagues across the House in paying tribute to Anne, a woman who was brave, principled, kind and generous. I, like many others, will miss her enormously, even though on my first morning as a Member of Parliament, when I was the youngest MP, I met her in Westminster Hall and she asked me, am I here on work experience? I think I've eventually shed my MP nappies. The Home Secretary is the ultimate arbiter of what happened in the Home Office. She isn't powerless and no one would pretend so. Would she agree that it was unwise of the government to heavily reduce the security offered to the member for Clacton, given all that we know about his particular danger that is posed to him and to his family? Would she agree that, frankly, it shouldn't have taken the murder of Anne for him to be offered a meeting with the committee, and that many will conclude, perhaps unfairly, but nonetheless, that it is only because of the political views of the member for Clacton that he is placed in this position? And will she use her power as Home Secretary to make sure that the security that he and his family needs is put in place immediately?
Yeah.
Well, let me say to the honourable gentleman, he will know that it is an independent process within the Home Office that deals with the risk assessment and risk management of those in public life. I'm not going to compromise the integrity of those arrangements by commenting in any detail on specific instances. Let me simply say and observe, as in the 10 months I've been in the Home Office, I have seen media reports in relation to various suggested risk assessments and risk mitigations. I have never commented whether to say something is true or false, simply because I believe that you should not breach that principle of not commenting so as to protect the integrity of the system. But that the meeting has been offered. Let me assure him in relation to RAVIC, it is and will always be fiercely independent. It must be, because the protection that is offered and the level of protection and the tactics of protection that are offered to people must never be based on a political assessment of who needs it, but an independent operational assessment of what risk is and how it is best managed. And I do think that that operational independence is incredibly important, and I will always maintain it and protect it. And I know the government as a whole will do so as well.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and the death of Anne Widdecombe is incredibly shocking, and I didn't know Anne Widdecombe as an MP, but it's been a wonderful afternoon listening to colleagues from across this House share some of their memories. She is was clearly a formidable political leader, and of course we will always remember her as well as an entertainer. And my thoughts are with her family and her friends at this incredibly difficult time. But her death is, I think, also a devastating reminder about the problem that all of us in this place, of all elected members and in particular councillors as well, all face on a day-to-day basis while we try to serve the communities that we love and we have been elected to serve. And I think it has come across very clearly in this chamber that we all want to and need to do more to protect each other and our democracy. And particularly reflecting on councillors, I speak a lot to my councillors in Guildford and also as the local government spokesperson to councillors from across the country. And the stories I hear are horrendous. Whether it's parish council leaders telling me about death threats, whether it's council leaders telling me about death threats. This is a democracy. We should not be experiencing this as elected representatives. And I'm grateful to the Home Secretary for the things she has set out already. But I wonder if she could also set out what actions the government is taking to protect elected officials at all levels, but particularly councillors and those who are served by Operation Ford. And whether she can confirm that there will be more resources made available to Operation Ford so that they can provide a consistent level of support across the country, as I know that police officers and police forces across the country want to do that, but I do hear varying levels of support across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Let me also join with the Honourable Lady in saying it has been a very moving afternoon hearing tributes to Anne Widdecombe across the House, and particularly from her former colleagues in the Conservative Party and also from her colleagues in Reform UK, who are obviously very personally affected, and I offer my condolences to all of them once again on the loss of their friend and their colleague. Let me say to the Honourable Lady, I take very seriously the wider risks to our democracy, including for local councillors. She has already referenced some of the steps that the government has taken through our Defending Democracy Task Force, Operation Ford. I'm sure there will be further developments in this space. I think we're learning lessons from the work that the task force did in relation to the most recent local elections, and I know that the developing nature of these threats has to be reflected in our new arrangements as we move forward as well. But we are very alive to the risks, not just to those of us in this place. Of course, given what's happened to Joe Cox, to Sir David Amess, and now Anne Widdecombe, parliamentarians get a lot of attention in terms of our security, and this is perhaps the most high-profile chamber and often referred to as the Mother of Parliament, so that would be understandable. But this country also cannot do without the work of its local councillors, its parish councillors, and all those people who put in the hours to make their local area better, and this government will stand by them too.
Can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement this afternoon, and I will allow a few moments for the front bench to swap over.
Brings us to a statement on the state of nature and climate 2026. Minister Mary Cray.
Thank you. With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to make a statement about the nature and climate crisis. Nature is the monopoly provider of everything we need to live, and we are living through the Anthropocene, an age where human activity is now the dominant influence on our planet's climate and ecosystems. We are seeing its consequences: pollution, climate change and mass extinction. Last year, my right honourable friend, the Energy Secretary, gave the first ever statement to this House on this crisis. 1 year on, I am here to set out the government's commitment to tackle these challenges. Because climate change drives nature loss, and nature loss drives climate change. We must tackle both. Droughts and floods are disrupting harvests, straining supply chains and pushing up costs. Our nature security assessment, published in January, shows that if the current rate of biodiversity loss continues, every critical ecosystem is on a pathway to collapse, from coral reefs that protect our coastlines to peatlands that store carbon and prevent floods. The UK's climate is getting hotter and wetter with more extreme events. 2025 was the UK's hottest year since records began. In the heat waves in May and June this year, the Met Office reported that as many as 2,700 people may have died. Railway tracks buckled, over 1,000 schools closed, and the London Ambulance Service had their busiest day on record. Since 1901, the UK sea level has risen by about 20 centimetres, but that rate is accelerating because 2/3 of this rise has happened in just the last 30 years. Which is why this Labour government is stepping up, leading globally on nature recovery, climate mitigation and adaptation. In the UK, we're working in partnership with local communities, businesses, conservationists and farmers. Before the Paris Agreement, the world was on track for around 4 degrees of warming. Now, national commitments put us on course for around 2.5 degrees. There is so much more to do, but this represents real progress. In December, we launched our Environmental Improvement Plan, which for the first time set out delivery plans to underpin our targets to restore nature, boost our recycling rates and protect our environmental security. Since then, we have published the Land Use Framework, the Water White Paper and the Farming Roadmap. We have invested a record £2.65 billion funding for flood resilience, invested in new food waste collection services and £1 billion in our national biosecurity infrastructure in Weybridge. Over the next 3 years, we will make the largest investment in nature ever, over £7 billion. This includes £5.9 billion for environmental farming schemes, £816 million for tree planting and £85 million for peatland restoration. Last October, we published the Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan to set out how the UK will continue to reduce emissions, to lower bills for consumers and secure good jobs for British people. Last month, the majority of members in this place voted to cut emissions by almost 87% from 1990 levels for the Carbon Budget 7 period running from 2038 to 2042. Under this government, over £100 billion of private investment has been announced in the net zero economy. We have done much on mitigation. But following advice from the Climate Change Committee, we are setting stronger objectives for climate adaptation. We are building our resilience for a minimum of 2 degrees of warming by 2050. And we are supporting combined authorities to increase their resilience to climate change too. In 2024, we saw a single year exceed 1.5 degrees of warming, which is why we are committed to working with our domestic and international partners to keep the Paris Agreement goal of limiting temperatures to temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Global warming is likely to reach 1.5 degrees at around 2030, but 1.5 degrees is and will remain the right limit. Every fraction of a degree of warming reduces the severity of impacts on people and nature worldwide. Every species saved reduces the risk of losses to the ecosystems we rely on: pollination, disease prevention, food and climate regulation. And the key to delivering our nature and climate goals is how we use our land and seas. Our land use framework shows we do have enough land to achieve our priorities across economic growth, housing, food production, climate and nature recovery. But we must make better decisions about how we use our land. We are moving from paper-based systems to making land digital and opening up the land